It's time for an all-new season in the Elite Racing League Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Gillespie, along with Rish Kozla. We're at Auto Club Speedway, the fastest track in IndyCar history tonight. We're at the new track record 500 qualifying just getting underway. We'll have our defending series champion Alexander Vandersand out in just a few minutes, along with a full field, including IndyCar driver Connor Daly making his debut tonight in his virtual number 20 version of his Dallara Chevrolet for Ed Carpenter Racing. We should have a good night tonight, right, Rish?
I think we should. I mean, everybody's been waiting in the off season, the wintertime, for this season to kick off. A lot of new faces here, and we get started with a big one. A 500-mile event at Auto Club. It's a huge race here, and part of that Triple Crown here. So for these drivers, what a great way to kind of, I guess, brush off that dust with one of the biggest races that we have all season long. So I, for one, can't wait, and it's great to have you back, of course, Mark, in the booth. We missed you in the second half of last season, so looking forward to calling another season with you here of this great IndyCar series.
Thanks, Rish. Feeling much better now, and thanks to everyone who sent along their good wishes. Doing much better now. It should be a fun season with guys like R.C. Enerson, Alexander Rigon, David Porcelli, the usual suspects you're going to see, but one we will not see. Henry Bennett is not taking part except for the Indy 500 this season. That's going to be a change of pace for all of us, right?
Yeah, it's certainly going to be a change of pace. I mean, just what he was able to accomplish in the seasons that he ran with us. But, we commented on it a ton, in previous seasons, and the time difference is crazy for Henry Bennett, often racing until it was like 2 or 3 in the morning to take part in the series. And so that can obviously be pretty taxing. And so he's decided to take a step back there. Of course, he's going to stick around for the Indy 500, a former champion of the Indy 500. But tough to do this every weekend there when you're racing that late at night. So definitely respect that decision to step back from Henry Bennett. We're going to miss him, but I think it really opens the door, I think, for a lot of different drivers to now kind of pick up where he left off because he dominated so much in this series.
Right now, R.C. Enerson is on the provisional pole. We're getting ready to grid up, I believe.
Yep, should be just waiting for all the cars to hit the racetrack here. They'll start gridding fairly soon here. And once
Alexander
they do that,
Vandersand will be on the outside, front row, followed by Adriano Pinheiro, Alexander Rigon, Chad Frankenfield, and Bruno Miranda. Round out your top 3 rows.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll walk you guys through the results from qualifying there and show you that starting grid, what it looks like. And so there you see Alexander Vandersand, R.C. Enerson, that front row with R.C. just barely, you see that 1,000th of a second grabbing the pole position. Adriano Pinheiro, one of those drivers that you always watch out for on these types of races. Alexander Rigon, though, fairly new to the series. I do recall him running a couple of races, I think, with us last season, but could be new to full-time racing with Chad Frankenfield rounding out that top 5. He's been around since, forever. This is his league. Bruno Miranda, Mark Murphy, another new name, David Porcelli, Craig Forsyth, we've had in here before, same with AJ Musselman. And then there you see Nate Siefker and Connor Daly. Connor Daly actually has been racing with us for a little while, has been in a couple of races that we've run in the past, so eager to have him back and see kind of how he performs. We had Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the Daytona 500 on Wednesday night, and we've got more star power here in this IndyCar series.
And I would love to see Dale run one of the IndyCar races with us later this season, hopefully. You're watching the new track record 500 from the virtual Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California. New Track Record, it's a weekly show hosted by Caleb Hatch and Justin Kenny. They'll bring you the latest news and rumors on IndyCar racing. Check their podcast out. It's the New Track Record podcast.
Yep, so cars 2x2, lights already out on that pace car, but we're going to stick to that same rule that we had last season, which was not going green initially. Excuse me, race control just corrected. We are, in fact, going green this time by, but on restarts, we will be going 1 lap later after the pace car goes in. But this time by, we will be going to the green flag straight as the pace car dives down pit road. So this season getting underway very quickly.
Let's get the action started as the pace car pulls away. R.C. Anderson brings them down to the starting line. The green flag is out, and we are underway. The 2022 Mega Driver 86 IndyCar season is underway. I should say Mega Player 86, my apologies. As Anderson leads him down into the first turn, followed by Van der Sant, Pinheiro, Rigon, Frankenfield, and Miranda.
You see Frankenfield already trying that higher lane there. He is just at the right rear tire of Rigon. He's going to stay there, but I don't think that's going to quite work out. We'll see. These guys could fan out here 2-3 wide, and they're going to try it. Chad Frankenfield way up to the wall. That could get very hairy there on lap number 1, but they all survive there as R.C. Anderson leads the first lap.
And 250 laps tonight. It's a little early to be trying tricky stunts tonight. But we'll watch as they go 3 wide heading down.
Yeah, a little early to see 3 wide here, but you can seem to run it. You're seeing drivers way up against the wall. We're seeing guys all the way around on the bottom of the racetrack. This is going to be really intriguing to see how these cars race. Obviously, there have been some updates to the package in iRacing and just the handling model as a whole. That just comes with the off season, but straight away you're seeing how these cars are racing, fairly similar to what we've seen in years past though. But Chad Frankenfield already up 3 positions, one of the biggest movers in the field so far today, and he's already chasing down R.C. Anderson for that lead spot.
And here comes Van der Sant right up, tucking underneath Frankenfield's rear wing.
New liveries for all these drivers as well this season, so it could take us a moment to start recognizing everybody. Everyone's in a little bit of a different scheme there. Pinheiro in that bright orange is the first one that's really throwing me off. We're used to seeing him in that white and green livery that he's run for the past 2 seasons, but soon enough we'll start to get it as Frankenfield puts down the fastest lap time and kind of in that high lane. He's going to try and see if he can carry enough speed off of turn number 2 to pass R.C. Anderson. Not quite able to get there this time but he's got the draft. And he's tucked right up, and he's going to look to the outside of Anderson for the lead of this race.
And Frankenfield takes the lead briefly for a second. Anderson moves underneath.
Stays ahead off of turn number 4. Side by side across the line. It's still Anderson, though. So there you go. Chad Frankenfield unable to get by this time, but that top lane really working here. We're seeing some more drivers start to migrate towards that top. You see there, Pinheiro had a higher entry. I think if we look further back, we saw a couple of drivers trying that as well. We've got our eyes on who is that? That's David Porcelli on the bottom lane. They're getting past, so actually he might be one of those drivers that needs to start moving up there, using that bottom lane, but then really tracking it up there on the exit of the corners.
We are clean and green so far into lap 6 of 250 tonight. In the new track record 500, R.C. Anderson from the IndyCar Series in real world racing is your leader right now. Has been driving for Top Gun Racing, did not make the 500 last year, hoping to come up with a ride for this year's race as well as the rest of the season. Oh, we've got... Did we have a spin? No, it didn't. Just the camera shaking there.
Just the camera shaking there. Did her hear some... there is some frustration just listening to the radio there. Some frustration, guys, being a little bit aggressive early on. I think not everybody's too comfortable with that, of course, on a 250-lap race. But as it stands right now, the green flag stays out. No contact, though it looks like we might have had some cars out a little bit further back. Let's take a look. As we see, this is Gavin Hibbs. Oh, big crash in the back.
An accident now. A big crash in turn 4.
But
3 cars involved.
Strangely enough, I don't see the caution flag out on the racetrack. As far as I can tell, if we go back to live pictures briefly here, it's still green on the racetrack. That was a big hit, though. Let's go back here. Gavin Hibbs. Oh. Interesting how the
numbers on that one.
Yeah, so that's Ryan Schold that we're following right there, and he's the one who kind of kicks off that incident. But we'll roll to the Whiskey Cast replay here and take a quick look at what happened to Ryan Schold.
Schold is on the low line.
Yeah, so that's Ryan Schold down low. He's going to track up.
Just cut across the wing.
Yeah, that's the 07 car there. That is who was that in that 07? That's Joe Ribeiro. So Schold goes then to the bottom and then just tracks up to the top. Just what a weird behavior there, effectively, to make that happen. So there's Hibbs involved in that. Michael Hossack the other one involved. So they're the three drivers who had that major contact, Schuld, Hibbs, and Hossack, but also Gil Ribeiro involved in kind of kicking off that accident. Meanwhile, we're still green. That accident occurred, and no yellow flag came out. There's still a battle going on for the lead of this race, so that's really interesting. I've heard race control is already investigating why a yellow flag wasn't thrown. That would have been an iRacing lobby setting or something like that. So interesting to see there. They could be in a situation where those automatic yellow flags are off, and so as race control, they need to be a little bit more aware of what's going on as Chad Frankenfield takes over the lead from RC Enerson. These two are really separating themselves from Adriano Pinheiro, who's about a second back.
Alexander Rigon is all over Pinheiro's rear wing right now. Can we go on board with Chad and get a good look at how things are running up there?
Absolutely. Let's take a quick look here. See what we can find with Chad Frankenfield. We do have an onboard camera with the 15 car, and so let's take a look at how he's tackling the night to the inside of RC Enerson. This is what it looks like to make a pass here at well over 220 miles an hour.
He takes the lead heading into turn one.
Lowest speed we saw recorded was 213, middle of the corner. And now you start accelerating again down the straightaway. Not upshifting out of fifth gear, though, interestingly enough. As RC Enerson now to the inside takes back over.
And here comes Frankenfield underneath as they cross the starting line. Making that pass underneath. Frankenfield back into the lead. Heading down to the backstretch.
Yeah, so confirmation from race control there where full course cautions in the lobby actually are off, interestingly enough. So for a long race like this, that's going to be really interesting to see how that affects incidents and if it potentially makes them larger than they need to be there. So race control really needs to be on top of what's going on between all these drivers. Keep an eye out for crashes all around the racetrack. So this could be very interesting here with lap traffic, things like that, if race control is focusing on a battle and there's an incident elsewhere on the track. So yeah, this could be interesting.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, for the drivers, obviously, you really don't want to hear that because you don't now know, that if there's going to be an incident when you come out of a corner. Obviously, at a bigger track like this is a little bit better because you have quite a bit of a heads up in terms of what's going on ahead of you. But yeah, not ideal for drivers here who are just 15 laps into a 250 lap race.
And obviously, there's no way to change that once the race is started. So we're stuck with it for tonight.
Yep. So yeah, just another hurdle that these drivers are going to have to face. We'll see how that plays out. Hopefully, it becomes a non-issue. But we'll see.
And here comes Enerson underneath, taking over the lead again.
Yeah, so as these two have been fighting, though, I will say Pinheiro's done a good job at closing that gap back down. It was as much as a second a few laps back. However, as we've kind of continued to whittle down the laps here, Pinheiro's been able to close back in on Frankenfield, and Rigon's been able to hang on there as well. They've kind of separated a little bit from Siefker here, who in turn has separated from the rest of the pack. Alexander Van Asant down there in 7th. That's your defending champion right now, holding off Mark Murphy. So right now kind of settled mostly into a position where drivers are kind of, they're either in two-car groups where they're going back and forth or they're happy just staying in line here. Really, that lead battle is where we're seeing some of the most action out on the racetrack in terms of just straight up back and forth between drivers.
While we have green flag running here, let's get in a comment and a thanks for one of our sponsors. Our premier partners, C2 Freight Resources, with complete freight management services. They can meet your needs today and your changing needs in the future. They have thousands of qualified carriers in their database and can handle shipping for anything you might have, from perishable foods to office equipment. If you need to ship something, they have access to do it. They can handle anything, including flatbeds, double drops, vans, tankers, reefer trucks, multi-axle heavy haulers, dump trucks, auto carriers, and a whole lot more. That's C2 Freight Resources at c2freight.com.
Update here on Connor Daly, down 2 spots from his starting position, so running in P14 right now, following AJ Musselman, the car right in front there. We'll keep an eye out on his progress. Probably, again, long race. Guy who knows how to run well in long races, leading his first Indianapolis 500 just this past year. Probably just hanging out right now, getting a feel for what the car is like underneath him before starting to move forward. We'll see what the pace of that 20 car, though, looks like over the course of this race as you see the cars stream by. Again, we're talking 220 miles an hour entering turn number 3 there. These guys are flying around this racetrack. It really is just craziness. For myself, coming from the Cup Series, where we're at one of the fastest tracks, of that season at Daytona, they're barely breaking 195 miles an hour, and then to be well in excess of 200 miles an hour everywhere on the racetrack here. These Indy cars really are just incredible what they're able to do.
Our defending series champion, Alex Van de Sant, is up to 7th now.
Yeah, Van de Sant here, just getting past Mark Murphy, or staying ahead of Mark Murphy, I suppose, though. That 69 car doing a good job at staying in touch here. Again, one of those newer faces to this league here. So interesting to see how he kind of tackles a longer race like this. That's the really challenging thing about this particular league here. There are quite a few different IndyCar leagues on iRacing, but very, very few have a full season of full distance races. So you do have to be, very patient as a driver. You have to be able to play out these long races, be smart with strategy, things like that. It's not just a sprint race here. It really is something where you just kind of have to settle in here for a groove, as we're only now just approaching the 10% distance mark.
Any word on pit windows tonight?
Unfortunately not. Was hoping to listen in and maybe get some of that, but we had a few technical difficulties before the race got started, so we had to focus on those there. But I guess we'll figure out here pretty early on. I would assume with a shorter track like this, what would you think? Maybe about 40 laps or so on fuel might make sense?
I would think so, but we'll have to play it by ear and see just where everybody gets in. We're going to try to welcome in the newest member of our broadcast team for this season, Tony Donahue. Tony, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you guys got me?
We got you finally. Good to have you on board this year. Tony, give everybody a quick bio of yourself for those who are not familiar with your work in Indianapolis area radio.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Sorry it took so long to get logged in here, but looks like we got a good race so far. I just launched burnoutsports.com as an all-racing IndyCar type of sport website. We want to trend to a younger crowd, and that definitely includes, iRacing and the Elite Racing Network just seem to be a perfect fit for us. So I'm here for a night of racing with you guys, and I'm looking forward to the final of the rest of the race here now that we're 23 laps in.
And give us what you're hearing about R.C. Enerson's prospects for getting a ride, at least for the 500 this season, given that we know that Top Gun's having some issues.
Yeah, I think the question that, as race fans, we all start asking ourselves around this time of year is, what does the entry list look like for the Indianapolis 500? And for the first time in a while, the problem is that there's just not enough engines. Usually there's not enough drivers that have the funding to come run the Indianapolis 500. That's not the case this year. There are more drivers that have the funding, like R.C. Enerson, that has a chassis and a tub, and it's about putting an engine into that car. So hopefully R.C. can find himself on the grid, maybe partner with another existing team. There are a few others out there looking for rides, including Steph Wilson. Honda has one more engine that they could use if needed. So we'll see. He's obviously leading the field here right now, which is good for him, and we'll keep his confidence hopefully heading into May, because we knew they were an underdog story last year. But he certainly had a lot of people talking, and hey, this is like the little team that could. And we saw Connor Daly, who's running tonight down there, helping out his friend RC, and a lot of the Chevy teams giving them a lot of feedback, trying to get that number 75 car into the field. Didn't quite make it, but we got to see him at the road course race later on in the year and at St. Louis. So hopefully he can pair with a team that maybe has an engine to put in that chassis that they already have.
Can we assume that Top Gun is pretty much dead in the water as of this year?
It seems like it, but their owner mentioned that they're not, and that they still want to get somebody into the 500. Now that could be speak to kind of cover some things up and go away quietly, but you just never know. And Connor Daly's a perfect example. This is a guy with a lot of talent that's had to bounce back and forth between Carlin Racing as well as at Carpenter Racing the last couple of years. And look, in December, we knew Air Force was leaving, and we were like, okay, well, that might be the end of Connor. So insert the next driver who has money, or maybe Ryan Hunter-Ray, and then 11th hour sponsorship from BitNile comes in, and it's really all about money. And we see it so many times that these drivers that have a lot of talent don't get the proper chance because they don't have the right funding or enough funding. So it's great to see Connor back in IndyCar. Great to see him back 2 full years, full time. Doesn't have to switch back and forth. He can fully focus on one effort, which I think will be good for his upcoming season here in 2022.
Especially with working with Carpenter as a team that he's worked with for a couple of years now to get that continuity built up, right?
Yeah, and it seems like him and Renus BK have a really good relationship. Him and Ed Carpenter, I know, have a great relationship. Very similar backgrounds. Very much connected in family ways as well. Just growing up at the Speedway like Connor did, and obviously Ed Carpenter did as well. So those cars are always fast at the 500. We saw Connor lead the most laps last year. We saw Renus up front leading, and Ed finished fifth. So those are always cars that are knocking on the door to win the Indianapolis 500.
That's our new colleague, Tony Donahue from Indianapolis Area Radio, joining us for this season on the Elite Racing League. Let's get back to the race now. R.C. Enerson leading, Chad Frankenfield. Well, as I say that, Chad passes R.C. yet again. But it's Frankenfield, Enerson, Adriano Pinheiro, Bruno Miranda is moving into fourth now, battling with Alexander Rigon, who just passed him to go back into fourth. Alex Van de Sant is sixth, Nate Siefker seventh, Mark Murphy eighth, John Silva ninth, and Nick DeGroot is the number 10 car right now. Tony, why don't you give us a little bit more about what Burnout Sports is, just to encourage folks to tune in.
Yeah, appreciate that. We've got a lot of team previews going on right now. I made my 5 bold predictions for the upcoming season. And there's a lot of guys right now that had really bad luck in 2021 that I think is a good discussion. And I think the biggest thing going into this year's Indianapolis 500 and IndyCar in general is the youth versus the experience. Last year we saw Scott Dixon on the pole at the 500, but yet Renus VK and Colton Herta still made it the youngest front row in Indy 500 history. So as much as we start thinking about these young drivers under the age of 25 taking over, you still got Elio Castroneves, who won his 4th Indianapolis 500 in his mid-40s. You still got Scott Dixon getting it done. He's in his 40s. Will Power still a factor week in and week out, especially on those road courses. So I think that's a great storyline, and it's as much as experience helps out. These young guys proved last year that they could win with Renus and Colton Herta breaking through with wins. Marcus Ericsson, who's late 20s, got his first win. So I just love the talent up and down, just like we have here in tonight's field. I mean, you look at some of the drivers right now that are probably trying to save fuel, get into that race mode, get into that rhythm of okay, where does my car work at? How can I save fuel here and there? Because as we know, especially at Fontana, we've seen it in real racing, we've seen it in iRacing. Anything can go wrong in an instance here. So I think right now these guys are dialing it in. Enerson's now falling back to 6th. So I think it's just really making sure that your car is
We've got a car up against the wall, Tony. We've got a car against the wall. That's Bruno Miranda in the 90. And we have a first yellow flag of the season.
Looks like
Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, you're fine. It was just what I was talking about on cue. You never know when things can change, and it looked like there was some back rear damage to that car as well. So, now okay, we've ran 32 laps. I know what my car feels like over a long green flag run, because we've seen these races usually have the long green flag laps, and that's what we just saw.
And it's perfect timing now for pit strategy to get everybody into the pits. We were thinking they might be going about 40 laps or so 32 will work perfectly. Let's watch again as Miranda gets up into the wall. Oh, something came loose. Let's watch that. Miranda in the red car, the red 90. And he just coasted right up into the wall there.
and kudos to him too as well for keeping that car up against the wall. We've seen so many times where car gets out of control and slides back across the track, causing more chaos. But yeah, again, it looked like the air just got taken up from underneath them, and then everything went downhill from there.
And here we go with the race on pit lane because everybody's coming in now.
And this is where you've got to hit your marks, as we know, whether it's here or whether it's full IndyCar go. You got to hit your marks, and you can gain and lose spots within tenths of a second here. So getting off pit road and getting up front for that restart is huge.
Let's see who's away. Hunter Smith away first. Adriano Pinheiro, Van der Sant, Frankenfield, Rigon, Siefker, Murphy. Hunter Smith with the fastest pit stop so far.
Hunter Smith actually just down on pit road, missed his pit box, so Hunter Smith's going to have to come back down, gives Adriano Pinheiro that lead there. So unfortunate there for the 0-3 car there on pit road. He'll have to come back down, though, in this next lap.
Thanks for the catch on that, Rish.
Looks like we had maybe one driver stay out, if not mistaken.
No, that would be Smith.
Smith, yeah.
He had to do the drive-through.
So
that will put Pinheiro in the lead when Smith pits this time by. Did Enerson have some issues in the pits because he dropped off the map practically?
Yeah, just looking at the lap time there, or the pit stop time for Marcy Enerson, minute and 6 seconds on pit road there. So clearly some damage or something going on there. Same with Connor Daly, actually, was also on pit road for about a minute, and he's actually coming back down pit road here. So definitely some issues with those cars. Not too sure. Going to see if I can figure out what happened down here between or with those two cars.
Wonder if there might have been a collision coming out in the pits.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the running order to continue to cycle through, and we haven't seen where Enerson is at this point, so something must have definitely gone wrong during that cycle of pit stops.
Enerson is being shown in 24th. Daly's down to 27th.
And just what we talked about is these pit stops took place. You got to hit your marks perfectly. You can't miss your pit box, as we mentioned. And really, you got to keep an eye on all those mirrors. You can't pull out early, and you got to make sure that you blend safely. And as we see the replay coming up here, sometimes it can be catastrophic, and your day could be done just as easily as it started on the pit road.
Yeah, weirdly enough, it looks like he got down on pit road just fine, but that stationary time was about a minute. Could have been potentially a speeding penalty for both Daly and R.C. Enerson, which could explain why there's no damage on those cars. Minute stationary on pit road serving that speeding penalty.
Aha, that would explain a lot right there.
This restart will be pretty exciting, too. We'll see how fast guys want to get towards the front. It's still early in the race, but how many times have we seen on restarts where guys feel like they can get a really good jump and make that overly aggressive move in the first couple of corners, and it ends not going their way?
We are back to green flag racing, this time by. The pace car is already off, but remember, we're doing one lap before we go back to actual green flag racing as they form up 2x2. Pinheiro, Van der Sant will be in your front row. Frankenfield, Riggin, the second row. Siefker and Murphy, your third row. De Groot and Joel Harleman, the first time we've talked about him tonight, that's your fourth row. Victor Del Porto and David Porcelli round out the top 10. Looks like we're going to do a single file restart this time by. As Pinheiro starts to pull away. We are back to racing under green flag conditions at virtual Auto Club Speedway in Fontana, California. The new track record 500.
Look like a nice little jump there by the leader, but a move coming here going into turn one. We'll see how aggressive Alex gets here as they head into turn 3.
Pinheiro starting to pull away just a little bit with about a quarter of a second gap over Van der Sant. It'll be fun to see how quickly R.C. Enerson and Connor Daly can work their way back up through the field.
It looks like there's a lot of battles there mid-pack from about 8th on back, a little bit spread out towards the front. Guys try to settle in, go single file, but there's some dicing going on in the back there. It looks like Paxing was making some passes as well. So a lot of fast cars trying to get up towards the front and using this restart to be aggressive and make some of those moves. Connor currently sitting 27th, but looks like still on the lead lap.
Anderson's showing 24th.
Yep. And we know he's got a fast car. I mean, obviously you start up front, but some things just don't go right. So he's got plenty of time. We still got, more than 200 laps to go to settle into this and get back up towards the front. We know we'll see a couple more cautions, and a lot of times with these longer races, it's the war of attrition, and you know that you're going to be able to gain some spots without even having to pass some cars. So nothing really too aggressive here early, but if you're RC interested, settle in, figure out how your car is going to be in those long runs, and just pick them off one by one.
While we're under green flag racing, let's sneak in a word for one of our sponsors, Blue Egg Marketing. They're the marketing department for small businesses. For small business owners, they're your biggest fan because constraints catalyze creativity. They help businesses punch above their weight class. BlueEggMarketing.com.
Yeah, very
nice
little
gap here. Nice little gap here for the leader, a little over 0.3 of a second, but Chad moving up here to the lead. Some guys just kind of going back and forth, trading off that lead.
I was going to say very little radio chatter going on here down on the ground. Looks like all the drivers right now just focused on getting into a rhythm with this particular stage of the race. That first caution always, I think, helps kind of get those jitters out of the way. You're always kind of racing towards that first caution for a lot of these drivers in these long races. So got that first one out of the way, the first big crash, even though I guess we had one prior to that. But got that out of the way. They got a chance to take a break, understand what they had underneath them, and now, again, general radio silence. We'll keep you guys updated on anything further there, but right now, I think most of these drivers just focused on moving forward, making it to that next stop.
And getting that first pit stop out of the way always helps, too.
And you think about, you don't want to think about it too early, but fuel mileage here. How many times have we seen it where you don't want to be the leader because you're cutting that air in half, and it slows you down a little bit as to being behind the leader or within a 2 to 3 car pack where you can save a little bit of fuel, or that turbulence and that tow kind of sucks you around the racetrack without having to go full throttle. So I think guys up front right now, like Frankenfield, are settling in and exchanging the lead back and forth to save a little bit of fuel, because right now you really don't want to be leading because it kind of screws up your fuel mileage a little bit, because you're probably getting 1 to 2, maybe 2.5 laps less than what you would if you were second and third. So that's why I think we see the leaders kind of swapping the lead back and forth.
We've had our first 239 mile per hour laps so far of the race. Nick DeGroot just turned to 239. We've had a couple of 238s and some 237s in there. By comparison, Frankenfield, our leader, is doing his top speed is a 236. It was a 234. He's now been passed by Pinheiro. Pinheiro has a top speed right now of 236 for the race. And we're on lap 47, coming around to complete lap 47.
some of these guys running these mega laps in the high 230s have plenty of drafting help there in the middle of the field, and a lot of times when you pull out the pass, your kind of momentum takes you back, and you don't really get to make the pass. But when you got a lot of cars in front of you in the middle of the pack, you can get up nicely and get a draft off of a lot of those cars, and that's why I think we're seeing these 239-mile-an-hour laps, and we'll see them on fresh tires, especially in the restart when the fields are a little bit more bunched together than maybe in a long green flag run where everybody gets a little bit spread out. But I think you'll agree with me too. How cool would it be to see the NTT IndyCar Series return to Fontana? Great racing there over the last 20 years, some of the fastest laps we've ever seen. And I think hopefully we're getting to a point when it comes to IndyCar where we see more and more ovals back on the schedule.
I would love to see that, especially since it looks now, the word we're hearing is that NASCAR may pull the plug on that plan to reconfigure Fontana into a short track.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan and Fontana, those were two of the races that were not that the others weren't, but when it comes to ovals, those are must watch. We got another move here up towards the front. It is super exciting. You got so many different lanes, so many different grooves that you could run, as we see a lot of the drivers using the low line today and the high lines, but super exciting. And whether it was back to the IndyCar days in the early 90s or the late 1990s and early 2000s, Jill DeFerrin putting up that huge qualifying speed. So hopefully one of these days IndyCar can get back.
I was at one of the Fontana races a few years ago, and it's a beautiful place to watch because you can see all the way around the track, and the sight lines are excellent. The sunsets are great, but unfortunately they just didn't get enough fans in place to be able to justify staying at Fontana as Frankenfield moves back into the lead.
I think that conversation really became clear when Graham Rahal, remember he won that race where Ryan Briscoe flipped, and we saw a lot of the drivers going 3 wide. He said, this is great and all, but there was 3,000 fans in the stands. So that's kind of been IndyCar's gamble, so to speak, is if we go back to these ovals, will they return? So I think places like Michigan and Kentucky would certainly bring great crowds because, when it comes to IndyCar ratings on TV, it's usually Louisville, Indianapolis, Dayton, Cincinnati that are in the top 5 for the best ratings. And if you can get a race back at the Kentucky Speedway, which I think now is covered with a bunch of Ford F-150 trucks that they're running the facility, I think a lot of fans would love to make that trip down to Sparta, Kentucky for another IndyCar race.
Between F-150 trucks and empty trailers that somebody's parked down there, there the last time I drove by there on 64. That's just a sad sight to see a racetrack full of 18-wheel trailers that are just sitting there being used as a parking lot. Frankenfield is taking an interesting line down here. Let's watch his line as he comes down into the turns. He was taking a low line, pulling ahead and pulling out into the lead while Pinheiro was taking that higher line through the turn. Rigon has now moved around Frankenfield into second place. But it was interesting watching while we were talking, watching that line that Frankenfield was taking, because he was doing a low approach into the turn.
Yeah, and I think it's early on in the race. You're coming up a little bit on some lap traffic here. It looks like you're just trying to figure out where your car works the best. Can you run it on the low line? Can you run it up top? I mean, just because the guy in front of you can run a low line doesn't mean that's necessarily where you want to be. It really depends on the driver's style, as we know. If they like that outside line and kind of hang it out on the apex, or guys like to go low and take the shorter line around. So figuring out what your car will do for you right now can really open the door for what it can do. Those final 10 to 15 laps, we know there'll be a lot of lead swapping in a chase for that checkered flag.
So turning back to the real IndyCar Series for a minute, the real World Series, I should say, which driver has the most to prove this year, you think, Tony?
I think there's a lot of drivers that have a lot to prove. I think 2 guys that really come to mind that have had some pretty bad luck. I know we already discussed Connor Daly, but you look at Graham Rahal and Felix Rosenqvist. Graham Rahal had a great Indianapolis 500. He had a great Grand Prix last year at the Speedway. Was really good at Portland. in that race towards the end of the season. But it just seemed like every time Graham had a good car, the bad luck would bite him, as we saw, obviously, apparently at the Indianapolis 500. And then Felix Rosenqvist, when you got your teammate Pato Award, winning twice and competing for a championship, and you struggle to even find a top 10 finish. I think Graham Rahal and Felix Rosenqvist are your drivers this year to watch out for, that quote unquote have that chip on their shoulder.
I would agree, those two, and Alexander Rossi also.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Rossi is he kind of controls his own destination, right? So he's got the driver contract coming up at the end of the year, so he's got that driver option if he wants to stay with Andretti. There's been rumors that Arrow McLaren would maybe put him in the car if Felix struggles again. Maybe Meyer Shank has another great year and they decide with their growth that they move to a third car, and maybe that's where Rossi lands. Does he go to Penske? That was rumored a few summers ago. Now that Penske's down to 3 cars. So, yeah, Rossi's definitely a guy. And just like Felix and Graham, these guys have won races before. They can get it done. They have the talent to do it. But sometimes there's learning curves with different engineers and different teammates. And I definitely think that we've seen that for those 3 guys.
Now, who has the let me put it this way. Who should we be watching for among the rookie class this year?
Well, I think on the ovals, it's clearly Romain Grosjean and Jimmy Johnson. But Kyle Kirkwood, I think, is the guy to watch as well. It was Andretti kind of said, well, we're going to let you go, do your thing. He winds up at Foyt. That's been a team that has struggled. It's been almost 10 years. I think it was Long Beach in 2013, the last time Foyt won a race in IndyCar. And before that, if I'm not mistaken, it was Ayrton Dare back in 2002 at Kansas. So we'll see what Kyle Kirkwood could do. I think he's a guy that has a lot of talent and can maybe move that team forward in the right direction and be competing for top 10s, top 5s, and ultimately podiums. So Kirkwood is a guy. I think Devlin DeFrancesco has kind of gotten a bad rap just because he didn't have a good year in Indy Lights last year, and he was moved up to Andretti Autosport with George Steinbrenner. I think he's got a lot to prove. So there are a lot of – and then, again, I think we're all looking forward to seeing what Jimmy Johnson and Romain Grosjean can do on these ovals. I know Grosjean raced last year at Gateway, but Jimmy Johnson and Grosjean at the Indianapolis 500, all eyes are going to be on those 2 drivers.
Foyt is a team that scares me this year just because they've got Kirkwood, Tatiana Calderon on the road courses, and then Dalton Kellett, and not a lot of engineering staff from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and you think about maybe at some point you decide, hey, instead of being in Houston, we're going to move the whole operation up here to Indianapolis. And maybe that's something that happens in the future. But you've got some inexperienced drivers. I mean, Dalton Kellett, it's kind of one of those things now where it's like, all right, can you do it? Can you give us top 10s? Can you compete? Can you stay on pace? If not, it might be a different direction. Obviously, he brings a big check. So there's a lot of inexperience definitely on that Foyt squad this year.
We've got Connor Daly in the pits now on lap 62. He's away now. We should start to see the next round of pit stops here. It's been about 30 laps since the last hits during that full course yellow we had.
Yeah, Mark, that's another 50-second pit stop there for Connor Daly as he comes down. I don't know if that was another speeding penalty or what, but yeah, 2 back-to-back minute-long pit stops for that 20 car. That's going to hurt, especially this time around with it being under green, as R.C. Anderson loses it entering his pit box. That again is going to lose time. So right now it's the pro drivers who have been struggling on and off pit road here on these first 2 stops.
And we see from time to time, Mark, it's one of those things where you get towards the back and you get cycled back, so you start making some moves, and you're thinking that outlap coming in and out of the pits that you can be ultra aggressive to maybe gain a second or 2 while you're in the pits, and that smells disastrous there for RC.
Let's see where RC is in the standings right now. We need to take a look all the way down to the bottom. He is being shown in 26th, Daly in 27th. Anderson still in the pits. He's been in there for more than a minute, 20 seconds. He's about to go a lap down as the leaders come back around.
looks like we could talk about this too, where a lot of guys have been big movers, into the top 10 so far. We've got guys that have gone up in the standings. Obviously, Chad Frankenfield, who's leading, is +4. Got some other guys there in the top 10. It looks like +11 and +16. So there's definitely been a lot of moves made so far in his first 65 laps.
Victor Del Porto is up 16 places right now into 7th place. Nick DeGroot is up 13. Nate Siefker's gained 6 places, and Alex Rigon is up 2 places. So, yeah, a lot of big movers. Further back in the field, Tristan Wood has moved up to 12th after starting 26th. Jared Rexing has gained 15 spots. He's now in 18th. Justin Fortner is up 10 spots. He's in 17th spot right now.
We should see more and more of these leaders start finding pit row again. We saw when that yellow came out at lap 35, and the green flag came back out at lap 37. So you're about 31 laps into the second stint of the race. A lot of these guys, maybe you come in a little bit early to make sure that you have a clean entrance to your pit and a clean exit. And we'll see maybe some of those guys try to stay out that are 5th, 6th, or 7th and extend that field maybe 2 or 3 extra laps to maybe get that yellow and see if they can cycle their way up towards the front.
We've only had 1 yellow flag so far. That was on lap 32. Chad Frankenfield is still your leader by about 0.2 of a second over Alex Rigon. Pinero's in 3rd. Van de Sant is in 4th. Van de Sant won the championship in our last season, last fall, just by a couple of points over Henry Bennett. Van de Sant learned that it's best to rack up points race per race, and you don't necessarily have to win a lot of races. You just have to be consistent.
And I think that we learned that in real life, right, with the IndyCar last year. You don't have to win every race. You have to have a good 500, which pays a lot of points. And you got to be consistent. Alex Palou did win 3 races, but 9 different drivers, I believe, won last year in IndyCar. So it's all about staying consistent. If you got a 10th-place car, it's about getting up to 7th or 8th and taking the finish you can get, and know that it's a long-term battle than risking your car and risking points to gain a few spots if you don't have it.
Before we get to the next round of pits, let's get another break in for our sponsor, Powerhouse Recycling. They offer the highest level of customer service in the industry for loads processed time and time again. Customized recycling solutions keep Powerhouse Recycling as a North Carolina market leader. They believe in quality customer service before, during, and after the processing of your materials. And they believe through their superior customer service, customized recycling, and complete transparency, they can earn your business and keep your business for a long time to come. Check them out, Powerhouse Recycling. Thanks for their support of the Elite Racing League. Completing lap 73 right now. Chad Frankenfield remains your leader, followed by Alexander Rigon in the new track record 500. I'm Mark Gillespie, along with Tony Donahue and producer Rish Kozla, bringing you the action tonight as we kick off the IndyCar Series on Elite Racing League, the Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series.
And what I love so much about a lot of these races, and it's in the real NTT IndyCar as well, but look at some of these awesome liveries on these cars.
Yeah.
Guys get really creative. Some of them, do throwbacks to their favorite cars, maybe that they loved as a kid, spice it up with their favorite coloring. We see a lot of different looking cars out there, and that's one of the cool things about doing this and about this league is having some of these great looking cars that you think to yourself, dang, that looks better than a lot of the liveries that we see on Sundays.
Yeah. Hey, Rish, are we doing a paint job of the race pick this year?
Not that I know of. from race
We
control,
could do our own.
We should certainly do one. If there's anyone that piques your guys' interest, we can run through the field here relatively soon whenever you guys feel like doing so, maybe after this next set of pit stops.
Sounds good. Let's take a look and see who has an interesting livery that we should take note of.
Looks like some of these guys in the top 10, are going to start coming down.
Here
pit
comes
rows.
Frankenfield.
So a guy in the top 3 who led a lot, which means that he probably didn't get the fuel mileage that he wanted to, or maybe some of those guys from 2nd, 3rd, 4th on back. So looking for a clean stop here, and we'll see where he cycles through, being the first driver that lead pack to come down pit road.
It's his marks and turns over the lead to Alex Regon. Pinero's in the pits now. Along with Mark Murphy, Joel Harleman, and A.J. Musselman, Porcelli, Tristan Wood. Donna Vera moving up as other drivers pull into the pits right now. A lot of the leaders are in now. Still waiting for Regon and Van de Sant to pull in. And let's watch. Here comes Regon, your leader. He'll turn over the lead to Van de Sant.
And we'll see where these guys cycle out compared to where Frankenfield, who was the first one. Usually that first guy on the pit road, for whatever reason, can gain about a tenth to 2 tenths. So we'll see where he cycles back through and if he can get out in front of Pinheiro.
Pinheiro and Frankenfield are being shown right now 10th and 11th. Back on the track.
As Frankenfield goes by, that'll be what should be back for the lead. So it looks like Frankenfield, the first one to stop. And it just always seems like you get up to speed on your out lap while the other guy is coming out of the pits, and you can gain a little bit more time than would if you came as the second or third different car on the opposite lap. So Frankenfield should cycle back here towards the lead once everybody gets cycled on and off pit road.
DeGroot and Del Porto are in. Let's watch and see when Van de Sant comes down. And he's into the pits now. That should put Pinheiro back into the lead, followed by Frankenfield. Let's watch and see where the... Go ahead.
I'm not very good at math, but it looked like on that green flag run there about 39 to 42 laps under green. So that lets your pit window open up about 40 laps. We'll see if maybe these guys can get to about lap 115, lap 20 before that third round of pit stops.
Good catch.
But I was told there would be no math, so don't. I'm no Jan Beekes, that's for sure.
There is only one Professor B.
This is true.
So Van, go ahead.
This ultimately right here would be the battle for the lead. It looks like with Frankenfield back on top, but is battling as we could go 3 wide here into turn 3. So the battle for the lead as they go around a lap car there. Frankenfield and Pinheiro switching it back and forth with Alex there running in third.
Alex Van de Sant in third, Alexander Regon in fourth. You don't want to get the Alexes confused when they run together like that. I got to admit, I like that livery on Pinheiro's car. It makes it nice and easy to stand out from the rest of the pack.
Almost reminds you a little bit of Felix Rosenquist a few times this year ran that green car. From the front, it looks like the DHL Honda that Ryan Hunter-Reay's ran, but when you see it from the side, it looks like at Indy last year, I believe it was Felix Rosenquist that had the orange View-sponsored liveries. So that's the vibes I'm getting, but anytime an orange car is on the racetrack, you know it'll be easy to spot.
It's got that nice McLaren papaya orange look to it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of McLaren, what were your guys' thoughts on the new livery and launch today that happened with both Aero McLaren as well as the Formula One team there? But very vibrant new color schemes, don't you guys think?
Yeah, and I think that's a team that does a really good job of utilizing its social media, doing doing the IndyCar and Formula One things together to maybe cross over that fan base. I love the baby blue that's been added to those cars, and I thought it was very exciting. And more importantly, if you watch their YouTube page, got over 250,000 views on it. So people were definitely tuning in, and hopefully you can get some of those Formula One fans to cross over and watch some American open wheel racing, Mark.
I am going to be completely honest with you. I was jammed up all day long and did not get to look at the liveries.
Well, you'll have to do that because they look good. They've added a little baby blue to the livery, still black and orange, but the cars certainly look sleek, and they will look good on the racetrack.
Well, I'm going to do a quick check right now. I'm assuming somebody at Racer will have posted it. Oh, that is nice. The F1 car is nice.
Yeah, and you see that baby blue that really brings out the color scheme, and I think really makes these cars stand out, which to somebody like me that has some spotting experience and has friends that are spotters.
We've got a car on the wall. Christian Alessio in the 81 car is up against the wall. That should bring out a caution. Looking at it now, Tony, that is a good-looking car.
Yeah, it'll definitely stand out, and that blue will look really good. Looks like we just got a little too high here going into the corner, and maybe just a momentary lapse, but ends up putting it in the wall on the outer banks there of turn 1 and turn 2. So
is there another car coming up on the inside of that one?
I didn't see that, but that was kind of a weird incident. Maybe we can get one more angle, but almost just like a momentary lapse and didn't quite make the apex of the turn, and into the wall you went.
Watching from the in car. He looked like he was trying to get out around to go high around that car up in front of him.
Just didn't seem to, the wheel just didn't seem to move, and straight into the wall he went. So unfortunate there for the 81 car, but it brings out another yellow. I don't think we'll see.
They're hitting the pits.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of guys. I don't think we'll see a lot of guys stay out when you got a chance to get tires, but it really all depends on what Frankenfield decided to do. And as we see there, he brings the entire train down pit road.
David Porcelli will move into the lead in the 93 car, staying out along with Jared Rexing. Everyone else in the top 20 is pitting.
Log jam there, getting out of the pits, and it looked like we might have had a switch for the second and third spot. We'll have to see where it cycles through.
It looks like Frankenfield was the first off of pit road.
It looks to me like Desan might have got out ahead of Pinheiro, if not mistaken, coming in and out of the pits there.
That's what it looks like. Van de Sant ahead of Pinheiro, then DeGroot, Murphy, and Rigon, rounding out your top 8. But Porcelli and Rexing will have to pit at some point. But obviously they pitted last time in the last set of pit stops, so they've got plenty of time to lead and try to see if they can build up some sort of a lead.
Yeah, only 10 laps since that last pit cycle, it looks like, with that last yellow flag. So
their tires won't be that worn out.
Yeah, staying out here will keep you up front if possible. And if those guys are running, 18th, 19th on back, why not try to cycle up towards the front? Even if you fall to 5th, 6th, or 7th, you still gain 10 to 12 spots, and you hope for another yellow unless you'll have to pit about 12 to 13 laps earlier than the leaders who just hit pit road.
Let's see. I can't see if the lights are out on the pace car or not. They are out.
A guy I'm going to watch here, he's currently running in the 12th spot. He's gained 14 spots so far in the day, is Tristan Wood. He's a driver that has quickly moved up towards the front. We saw him get aggressive on that last restart. So we'll see if that number 11 car can move inside of the top 10 here, and he might be a guy to watch over the final 150-plus laps. And I love a lime green car, that's for sure. And I love Nesquik as well.
Just a reminder here, guys, as the pace car does go off, there we'll do one more lap here under pacing speed. Get the field organized before we go back to real green flag racing here. So one more pace lap here behind the 93 car now deciding the pace.
Well, during this yellow flag, we've definitely got an opportunity to see some of those awesome liveries, as we mentioned. And I'm sure we can get a rundown of most of the field. But the Nesquik car reminds me of the old NASCAR Busch Series car in the early 2000s. So that's my early front runner for my favorite livery of the race.
I have to admit, I kind of like the one Van de Sant's car looks nice to me, that number 97 with the purple and white livery.
A good one, especially if you remember back to the 2010 Indy 500 when Kim Kardashian and Trim Spa sponsored Graham Racing. So interesting formation here as we come back to green, lining up on that high side. We'll see what the leaders decide to do. Maybe a little bit slower. Frankenfield has led most of this race. He's third in line. We'll see how aggressive he gets on this restart.
As the rookie, David Porcelli brings them down to the line. We're back to green flag racing on lap number 90. Speed picking up right now as Frankenfield makes a move.
And if you're Frankenfield, you don't like seeing these two slower cars, even though they are the leaders, run side by side. It doesn't give you as much room, and that could really cause for chaos. It could take away your toe. You can lose momentum and fall back a few spots. And we just see him move. He tried to make a move to go 3 wide, but thought of it again. And now he's falling back to 4. So we'll see if he can get back in the throttle and gain back up that momentum.
Rexing has moved into the lead over Porcelli. Van de Sant, Frankenfield, and Pinheiro, your top 5, as the ducking and weaving begins to try to break the draft.
And the rookie using all of the racetrack. We see this as the leader. You know, you try to break up that draft from behind because sometimes you're a sitting duck as the leader and the freight train goes by you and you end up going from first to about 5th or 6th. But he's doing a good job right now of using up the entire racetrack, as we see right there, and breaking up that draft and that toe that gives the second place car momentum as he looks to the outside here.
Here comes Porcelli on the outside. Rexing on the inside. Now the swap place is heading down into the main stretch.
Looks like these guys up front are doing a good job of giving each other plenty of room. They're both using a lot of the track as Rexing uses the high side and has been coming down low here. So a lot of these drivers don't mind if you use up a lot of the track, but just be respectful with those moves and be consistent with them. You don't want a guy that goes in low in turn 3 and then they come back around and he's going high in turn 3. So you just want some consistency to kind of be able to react to that driver in front of you, breaking that air and breaking that toe.
Rexing in the yellow 28 is back in the lead now. battling with Porcelli as we come down on lap number 94 here in the new track record 500. Now it's Porcelli. And back to Rexing as they trade places back and forth. Frankenfield back up to third.
It looks like Frankenfield has a car that can run fast and consistent, whether he's on the inside line or the outside line. But again, this is where you have to be patient as you go 3 wide right here. You've got to be patient knowing you're coming up on lap 100. You got these guys in front of you. You're thinking, where have they been all day? And you just want to get back up to the front and lead.
Which is where Chad is now, back in the lead.
And now if you're Frankenfield, you just want to put down some banger laps, so to speak. You want to put down some qualifying laps. Distance yourself a little bit from those guys in second and third, which is we see here another battle for the lead. Easier said than done. But if he can get back up to the front and stretch out, and really he's racing against, the 97 and the 56, because those are the guys that have been up front all day and pitted with him. As we know, the driver's currently second and looks like now down to fourth, and Rexing and Porcelli have not pit and will need to pit here in about 18 to 20 more laps. And I wonder if a lot of guys, Mark, in the field have noticed what Rexing has done and Porcelli by staying out and being able to really hold your own up towards the front. Rexing was second on that restart. Now he's battling for the lead with Frankenfield, who's been the best car so far through this first 100 laps or so. So maybe if you're back in the field like a Tristan Wood or a Mark Murphy or A.J. Musselman, you say, all right, I can maybe cycle through on that next, if we get a short yellow flag, back-to-back yellows within 10 to 15 laps, I can cycle up towards the front of the field. It's how Connor Daly got to the lead last year in the Indianapolis 500.
Absolutely. Tristan Wood up 15 spots now. He's now being shown in 11th position.
Again, I know we talked about this earlier, but Fontana just makes for great racing action throughout the field. I know we've been watching the leaders here a lot because that's been a great battle. But looking over here at the leaderboard, Mark, it seems like every lap there's different guys moving back and forth, and as we see it pass here, they're in the top 5. I mean, it's these kind of battles are going on throughout the entire race. And when you look at an IndyCar box score, and I'm sure you look back on this one, there's always that stat, total passes throughout the field, and it's always in the high 700s, 800, and sometimes even more. And I think we've seen a lot of changes for position here in the first 100 laps.
No, this is a track that was built for IndyCar racing, and the fact that Indy doesn't race there, that the IndyCars don't race there anymore, is just a real shame, as we talked about earlier. To see this track in the hands of the NASCAR boys running about 30 miles an hour slower just takes all the fun out of it.
And we've seen some great battles at this track and at sister track up in Michigan, up in Brooklyn, Michigan, a place that I grew up going to every year and seeing some of the greatest races and wildest finishes that you can ask for. So I think we're setting ourselves up for a wild finish here and into the top 4 here, a guy that we haven't really talked about. That 45 car, Sideker, looks like he's getting a little racy, and his car's coming to him.
Well, as we've just passed that lap 100 mark in this race, let's go actually through the field here and talk to you through each of these different drivers. And as they are swapping positions all the time, we'll try to get them as close to where they should be. But start with Jared Rexing. How about the race he's had? Obviously, got up here on a little bit of pit strategy, so a little bit off cycle from everybody else. Last pitted lap 76. Most of the field pitted on lap 86. But that bright yellow Nesquik car right now leading the way after starting in 33rd position. So Jared Rexing as well, showing that he does deserve to be up here. He's been sparring with Chad Frankenfield these past couple of laps and doing a great job at hanging on there. But speaking of which, how about Chad Frankenfield and that 15 car? Aggressive early on in the race. to get to the front and has really been there all day long. This is kind of we haven't seen a lot of this from the 15 car as much in recent seasons, but he's been able to work in the offseason, and this 15 car looking stronger than he has in a very long time. Let's see what Chad Frankenfield can do, not just tonight, but also this season long. And now to our new leader, the 45, Mark.
Nate Sefker has moved into the lead in the 45. He's been just, wiggles there. He's been moving up slowly through the field right now, up 8 spots from where he started in 11th position earlier tonight. Then you go to Alex van der Sant, our defending series champion, who's been in that top 5 all night long, just running very consistent, very smooth laps. Same with Adriano Pinheiro in the number 56, that nice bright orange car that's easy to spot. Tony?
Yeah, and you look at some of these cars that have been consistently right there inside of the top 5, and a guy that I just mentioned in Sefker, who seems to be getting a little bit racier as this stint goes on, and you want to have a car based on what we've seen. Yeah, we've had a couple of yellows, but we see it in the series time in and time again where these late restarts don't happen. These races finish under the green flag, so you want to make sure that you have a car that is at its best at about lap 28 to 32 of a stint, because more than likely it's going to be a shootout to the finish that was over 30 green flag laps. So you really want to have a good car right now in this stint, knowing that it's been about 25 to 30 laps since your last pit stop.
Going back through the field, Nick de Groot is up 13 spots from his original starting position. He's in 6th place now. Victor Del Porto, another big mover, up 16 spots to 7th. Alexander Rigon has dropped back in 8th, but is still running in that top 10. After being up around the front after the last round of pit stops, David Porcelli has dropped back to 9th. And Mark Murphy with another good, consistent run to round out the top 10.
And Murphy's the guy we talked about earlier on in the race early. So we know he's got the speed. We know he's got the talent. He obviously had that 7th-place starting position, so he's got some speed. But again, plenty of time, so more than half of this race to go. With that being said, you can keep on adjusting your race car. You got about probably 3, maybe even 4 more pit stops, depending on how the yellow flags fall.
We've got a car in the wall. Porcelli's in the wall.
He was the leader, if not mistaken, on that restart, correct? He had stayed out, had the lead. So maybe the car just started to go away on him. Sometimes that car gets a little bit too tight on those long runs as the fuel starts to burn off, and sometimes it gets too loose. So the handling may have gone away on him on there and just slid him up into the wall.
Let's see what happened to the rookie, David Porcelli, here. Oh, just got up there and wiggled right into it.
Looks like he was battling with Joel Hallerman, if not mistaken, and just lost the air from in front of him, got chopped, tried to save it. And at that point, the car kind of is on roller skates, so to speak, on ice. Once you get up into that groove and you lose track of the car, and next thing you know, it's in the wall. So tough break for a guy who was leading there during that restart.
We stayed green throughout, though, so the leaders are still running at top speed. Nate Sefker, your leader. Jared Rexing, Chad Frankenfield battling for 2nd and 3rd. Right now it's Frankenfield over Rexing, and then Van der Sant and Pinheiro, top 5. Van der Sant has moved up into 3rd place now with this bobbing and weaving back and forth. As Frankenfield takes over the lead again.
And I think these top 3 right here are the drivers to watch out for. I have been impressed this stint so far by Rexing, who as we know, is going to have to pit a little bit earlier than these guys running first, second, or third. But when you look at his strategy call to stay out there, you're thinking, all right, well, he was running 10th on back, so he's definitely gained some spots and been able to hold their own. But I think the drivers currently 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that are going to battle it out for this lead, barring any wild circumstances. And I really liked what Seth Kerr has been able to do to get up towards the front, especially here late in this stint, and go back and forth with Frankenfield, who's been the class of the field so far. So it looks like Mark is having some issues, so we'll try to get him dialed back in here as we continue to edge towards the halfway point of this race at Fontana. And we're having a great one so far up front. Chad Frankenfield has really been the class of the field, as we've talked about through the outset. But, you think about what's going to happen here over the next 125 or so laps as we edge towards the halfway point. Frankenfield back in the lead with Seth Kerr currently second. And Jared Rexing, a guy that we just talked about in that nice quick yellow car, he's going to have to pit here coming up shortly as he makes another move here going side by side with Pinheiro, who's been a top 3 car throughout the race so far. So the leader's really settling in. We're on a long green flag run as we edge towards the halfway point of this race. Some cycling towards the back end of the top 10, but Chad Frankenfield doing a great job. He's been up front throughout this entire race, and we've got plenty to go here on the new track record 500.
Yeah, race for the lead here is just as exciting as it has been. I mean, I think the protagonists have just changed a little bit. It was Pinheiro and Frankenfield before. Now it's Seth Kerr and Frankenfield, but Pinheiro back into third position. He's kind of slowly been working his way back up the order here, hasn't he? Just maybe a bit of a miscue on pit road where he lost some time there and has now... It's taken that time to regain that track position, but Pinheiro, we know how fast that 56 car can be. So eventually we could see this become a 3-car battle, or we'll see, though, how Pinheiro is able to close in the gap here. Now, 3/4 of a second behind Frankenfield, so still some work to do as there's still that battling going on for the lead right there.
Yeah, and I've been keeping an eye on Rexing, who, again, as we mentioned, did not pit in that previous yellow. We had a yellow flag and then a yellow flag right after that and he looks like he's coming into the pits now. So I was going to say, it was coming here over the next couple of laps. He's about 10 laps short on fuel than the rest of the leaders. So we'll see where he cycles back through as we see some of the leaders as well coming down pit road and coming off pit road. So looks like for Rexing that strategy might have played out. If he can get back up there, if this stays green, he could find himself staying back in the top 5 as Frankenfield and Seth Kerr battle for the lead with Pinheiro there in third. But it looks like some of these guys are about 8 to 10 laps away from coming back down pit road. It should be right around the halfway point of this race, right around lap 125.
Yeah, for sure. We'll keep following that. Unfortunately, for Mark Gillespie, he's gonna have to sign off here tonight. So sorry to hear that there for Mark. Still recovering from that concussion he had earlier last season. It was great to have him in the booth right here, but for a long race like this, that does definitely get tough. So Tony and I will continue to bring you the action for the second half of this event as the caution comes out on lap 120 here. That's great news for actually no, terrible news for Jared Rexing, who I think had just come down pit road. No, but it was Jared Rexing. Oh no!
So Rexing brings out the yellow, and we talked about this earlier in the race. You're trying to dig and make up one. It looks like, just a tough collision there.
Yeah, it was the 47 of Joseph, Grijalva. Excuse me if I mispronounced that there, but Joseph Grijalva kind of was on the apron there, and yeah, this will be interesting to look here.
Yeah, let's take one more look at it here. The Whiskey Cask replay coming up on the Elite Racing Network, and again, cycling through pit stops. Rexing is merging on after pitting, kind of merges and really puts that car in a bad position. Has to go low drastically, and sometimes when your line is taken away like that with a car merging on the backstretch coming back from the pits, you lose your line, and therefore going into the turn, you're a little bit lower on the apex. We saw him just get below that white line and just absolutely lose it. So Rexing trying to make up some spots, knowing that he's about 10 laps off of the strategy, trying to gain on green flag, and cuts off the line and 2 cars into the wall hard. So we'll see guys like Sepp Kerr and Frankenfield, the leaders, coming down pit road here right now.
Yeah, you definitely have to feel there for Jared Rexing. I think that he was an innocent bystander in that one. Really, that 47 car on the apron heading into turn number 3, and that's close to full speed there, if not at full speed. You can't really be doing that, and so that's kind of what to me kicked off that incident. So unfortunate there for that 10 car, who I think was playing the strategy game, and that could have worked out really well for him. But that takes out that 10 car from the race. It also takes out the 47, so 2 more drivers out of it. That leaves us with, on track, at least on the lead lap, only about 18 cars or so. Alexander Van de Sant, who went down a lap, looks like he had actually pitted under green there, so that didn't bode too well for him in terms of how that all played out. But he's going to come back and stay out right here. He should get that lap back then with the wave around, but definitely that's going to hurt that 97 car, having pitted under green. And having everyone else pit there under yellow.
Yeah, and that really can screw up your races. We're almost to the halfway point now. It's going to take a long time. We know he's got a fast car. He's been up inside of that top 4 throughout the race. But, yeah, I mean, that's what happens in green flag pit stops. You get caught out, or you get caught on pit road before the leaders do, and they get to come down under yellow. And we've seen it time and time again in iRaces like this and in real life, where that window, you stay out a lap or two too long, and it comes back and bites you, and it certainly did there. So he'll cycle back around. It looks like Syker got off first, with Frankenfield currently second. Syker's got a really fast car. We saw it come alive there in that last stint. He moved from about 5th to 2nd, then made a move for the lead after starting, I believe, 18th or 19th on the grid. So this will be an interesting restart with a new player up towards the front.
Yeah, it's been an interesting cycle of drivers that we've had up here. Victor Del Porto as well there in P4, changing things up, and that's part of these types of races, right? You have to play not only the pit strategy, but the caution strategy, right? And obviously nobody can predict exactly when a caution is going to come out, but you have to be able to kind of adapt everything that you've planned for the race based off of when these cautions come out. So it becomes just really tricky, and you have to be flexible in what you're able to do and be willing to take some risks here on strategy. So interesting to see, again, how things play out. We're going to have some of the same, some new drivers up, some new protagonists up front. It makes the racing all that much more exciting, because now, again, on this restart, you're going to maybe have some drivers once again around other drivers that maybe they're not as familiar racing against over the past or this first half of this race here.
Yeah, and over 500 miles, as we see, you've got to have a good car, right? You got to have pace, but sometimes the race has to fall your way, and the yellows have to fall your way. And we've seen some of those guys play the strategy card to gain some spots. We know that Setker's got a really good car here, it looks like. Frankenfield's been up towards the front. He wants to stay there. But we'll see if some of these guys that have made mega moves, like Tristan Wood there in 7th, and Gilbert Bureau, who's currently in 8th, that have made a massive charge towards the front here in this first half of the race, if they have the car to get up towards the front in the second half of the race. So it's going to be an exciting 125 laps coming up as the pace car is off and the field will file up for this upcoming restart. And we saw in the last restart, it got racy up front early. So I expect that coming up here with this restart. And again, I hate to do the announcer jinx here, Rich, but sometimes raise cautions, And now all of a sudden you're past that halfway point, and some of that patience starts going out the window. So we'll see how aggressive these guys are. We saw a couple passes there for the lead in that last stint go 3 wide. So we'll see if these guys settle in for maybe one more stint, or now that we're at the halfway point, if it's simply time to just go racing.
Yeah, past the halfway point in the race is where you start thinking about the end here, and you start prepping and figuring out what kind of moves you're going to make. I mean, if we have a late race restart where maybe you've only got 1 or 2 laps left in this, maybe some of these guys are thinking, hey, this is my chance here. So aggression's going to pick up. Obviously, with aggression, you're going to get more and more incidents. Let's see how these are called and how they play out on the racetrack. And right now, they are going back to green flag racing. So Sefker leads this field to the green across the line as we just take over to lap 125. Nice and well behaved on the initial restart here, but it'll be interesting once everybody starts catching the draft. What kind of moves and runs are people going to get around this racetrack? Kind of a 6-car breakaway, though, right at the start. Tristan Wood didn't seem to get rolling fast enough, and that's already separated this group here. But up front, Chad Frankenfield already to the inside, and that's the kind of aggression we're expecting to see. Guys making moves here because you can run 2, 3, maybe even 4 wide here if it really gets down to it because of this wide track and flat nature of this racetrack.
Yeah, and we saw the lead, especially early in that last set, get swapped back and forth. So I would expect Frankenfield and Sefker to trade this back and forth. You got Pinheiro just kind of sitting there biding his time in third. He's been inside the top 5 throughout the race so far. We'll see if he starts to get aggressive, or does he just let these 2 guys up front swap the lead back and forth while he sits back, tucks in that toe in third, maybe save some fuel. So, and if you look, it looks like on a leaderboard, we've got at least 20, maybe 25 drivers still on the lead laps. So anything can happen over this last 125 laps as Sefker goes back towards the front. You got guys like Tristan Wood, as we mentioned, under yellow. Gil Ribeiro, they've moved up. They're 7th and 8th right now. So there's a lot of fast cars that are inside of that top 10, which is right where you want to be as we just pass the halfway point of this one. And we could talk a little bit, too. You think about the upcoming IndyCar season, 2022, and the field that we have with IndyCar and how dynamic it is and how almost any given Sunday a different driver could win, and it's so unpredictable. And we've seen here with this race at Fontana, it is unpredictable. We've got guys that started towards the back that are now up towards the front. Del Porto looks like a guy that's super fast, kind of just biding his time there in 4th. He's up 19 positions on the race. So just like in the real NTT IndyCar Series, you can pretty much start from anywhere, but as long as you continue to move forward and realize it's a 500-mile race, you can get yourself up towards the front as we got a nice battle there for 5th.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about these long races here, and of course the equivalent performance that you typically get throughout the field. Of course, there are bigger teams and smaller teams, but realistically, certain drivers are and certain teams can find that right setup on some weekends and have that performance and have that kind of come out of nowhere. I mean, we've seen that in the past. I mean, remember Carlin at Iowa a few years back with Connor Daly we were talking about earlier. A number of other times where a small team comes up with a big performance. You get that same sort of thing. Of course, we're helped a little bit by the fact that all these cars are prepped the same way in iRacing. Everybody has the same setups. There's minor adjustments that they can make. They can adjust roll bar and weight jacker, but realistically, that's about it. So that keeps performance even closer. But IndyCar themselves have done a fantastic job at improving that kind of closeness of the racing, not just during the race itself, but of course from weekend to weekend. For me, that was always kind of the excitement of tuning into an IndyCar weekend is which team's going to have it. Which team's going to kind of find that setup that works for this racetrack with the current conditions, with the current type of car that they have, with the current package. And so they've continued to do that within this IR18 era, and I don't see any reason they're going to stop anytime soon. So, leads to some fantastic racing, and we're seeing that right here on display in iRacing, and I, for one, can't wait. The IndyCar offseason is always just too long.
And luckily for IndyCar fans, we get St. Pete about 10 days or a little over a week earlier than what we have in the past. And I always look at when you go into the Indianapolis 500 before practice starts, before any on-track activity happens, I look and say, who realistically, and I visualize it and say to myself, who do I feel can win this race based on past performance, based on team, based on ability, and sometimes it's based on your gut feeling. And usually that number is about 10 or 11, and then I can wind it down to about 6 by race day because it's usually the guys that start up front. But this year, going into the Indianapolis 500, there's probably 15 to 16 drivers that I think realistically have a shot to be up towards the front. It's super unpredictable so far. And kind of like this race so far today, we've got Frankenfield back up towards the front. Steph and him going back and forth, trading that lead. It's been about 15 laps since they pitted. We've been under this green flag stint for about 10 laps now. Pinheiro sitting patiently in third, as mentioned. Ragon there in fourth. Tristan Wood, a guy that I mentioned about 30 to 40 laps ago to watch out for. He finds his way into the top 5. Make it now fourth as he makes a move. He's up 22 positions as he swaps back and forth for that fourth and fifth place position. Del Porto currently in sixth. We know that he's got a fast car. Nick DeGruer there in seventh. Ribeiro eighth. Harrelman, who was involved in an incident earlier, kind of narrowly avoided disaster inside ninth, and Mark Murphy rounding out your top 10 so far. So there's still plenty of racing to go as we've hit lap 135. But Tristan Wood, the impressive drive of the race. And Rich, we talk about this. You can name every Indianapolis 500 winner for the last 10 years, but sometimes there's a driver that just he ran the best race. And I think last year Simon Pagenaud is a perfect example of that. He qualified towards the back, ran up towards the front. Alexander Rossi a couple years ago, remember, I think he finished top 4 after qualifying 32nd. Tristan Wood right now running probably the best of anybody and just biding his time up towards the front. And it has that car, that 11 car in position to be able to make some moves and win the race, as we are almost we're getting to the point where there's just going to be 100 laps to go. So you really want to be in position right now as Frankenfield has moved back all the way to 7th. He was just leading the race. Might have got out of the groove there as he loses another spot. So Chad Frankenfield, who's been the class of the field so far and has really been inside the top 2 throughout the day, maybe a moment for him where he had to lift off the throttle. And in this close pack, when that happens, you can find yourself moving 5, 6, 7 positions back. So Frankenfield back to 7th place. We'll see if he can regather that car. It takes about a lap to get it back up to speed after you lift and lose that momentum. So we'll see if he can move back up towards the front as the top 3, Setker, Ragon, and Wood. Now Tristan Wood into the top 3. He's moved up 23 positions. He's got one of the fastest cars, that lime green, almost Danica Patrick GoDaddy looking car there, running third.
Yeah, just going back to Chad Frankenfield here and following, looks like they've just lost the balance of the car here. You can see mid-corner, a lot of movement on that 15, and he actually makes the call to come down pit road here, and having last come in, I think it was on lap 121, way too early for a pit stop, so something very wrong with this 15 car. The man who's led the most laps here tonight, Chad Frankenfield, suddenly this could be the end of his day, potentially.
And we talk about when you're leading or you're second and you're swapping that lead, your car works one way. But if you get shuffled back to third and fourth and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 cars in front of you, your car handles differently. And if you don't get on that weight jacker and shift some things around, you could really lose the handle. And I think we saw that with Frankenfield, who's now moved back all the way. We'll see how long this pit stop goes.
It's a long stop. Yep.
Chad Frankenfield. So looks like it's a little bit more than maybe just losing the balance of the car. It'll certainly go a lap down, and this is catastrophic for that 15 car, who has had such a good day and has been up towards the front and has led the most laps so far on the day, and really was the guy to beat here for the first 135 laps of the race.
Absolutely there. So now goes 2 laps down here. to the leaders. So again, just continue to add insult to injury, and that car has not left pit road. It's been there for a minute and 20 seconds. Is this day over for Chad Frankenfield? Something happened there to that 15 car where, let's see if we can find, just hearing some of the radio chatter, if we can get anything in there, but
yeah, and just bad luck. I mean, you have such a good car, and he's done a great job of not being ultraly aggressive. Yeah, you're swiping the lead back and forth, but eventually, he settled into a rhythm, and we knew he had a really good car, and something just goes wrong. We see there he's back to the 21st position. So all for naught for Chad Frankenfield, who had a really, really good day going. As we see, he's finally back out on the track. It looks like 2 laps down. It's going to be almost impossible with a little bit more than 100 laps to go to recover from this. So very tough break there for our guy Chad Frankenfield. But the battle up towards the front now with the leaders. Now all of a sudden we've got guys that haven't been leading throughout this race. They find themselves up towards that top 3, battling back and forth there. We saw Wood in second. Sepker now back into the lead. Ragon in third. So that lead pack, it looks like there was that first 8 cars. They're all right there within striking distance as we go 3 wide again.
Yeah, this really opens up the race, I think, with Frankenfield out of it, because I think up until this point he was looking like the favorite, and over the radio just saying car just suddenly got tight and wasn't really sure how to fix it, and just kind of had to come down pit road to deal with it. So like you mentioned there, maybe that car was a certain way when it was up front, but as he continued to fall back, maybe one mistake lost him enough positions where that dirty air really gets to you, and he had to kind of stop that car there, figure out what was going on before he could get back out on the racetrack. So unfortunate there for the 15 car. Potentially some damage there that he had to get fixed, though. That's a long pit stop even for some, if it's aerodynamic damage, most likely suspension damage, but even those are tough to fix on these cars. So yeah, just a tough break for Frankenfield, but opens up this race completely. I mean, Sefker's really picked up, his performance since about that halfway point, about lap 100, and has been leading pretty convincingly. Hasn't been too much swapping of positions there with Regan, but like you mentioned there, Tristan Wood, got to look out for that 11 car. Just the forward progress he's been making throughout this race, and continues to look patient on the back here, getting past the lap car of Jared Rexing. These 3 cars up front all look really good. Of course, Adriano Pinheiro, don't count him out. Same with Del Porto or De Groot. I mean, those guys are veterans of the series, and have shown how they've been able to perform well, put on great races. De Groot was inches, probably even less than that, away from an Indy 500 win last season, so knows how to get the job done and perform well in these long races. Don't expect that 89 car to go anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, he's been consistently there running 5th or 6th and kind of buying his time and making those moves. It looks like might had a problem with the 07 of Ribeiro. He seems to be losing a lot of positions. But yeah, we talked about Tristan Wood about 75 laps ago and noticed that he had been moving up through the field. And he finds himself now right where he wants to be, inside of that top 3, as the leaders continue to span out as we get to the lap 150 coming up. And as we know, as these green flags continue to go deeper and deeper into the stint, you start having to deal with lap traffic. Cars start falling off a little bit. You don't keep up with the handling of the race car, and sometimes that could lead to disasters. So Sepker's still comfortably in the lead. He's now, I think, the class of the field now that Frankenfield has been eliminated. Ragon is still right there. Wood, as we just mentioned. And there's some other guys like Del Porto that I don't think we're done hearing from. De Groot, as you mentioned, is the guy that knows how to get to the end of these races. So I think these final 100 laps, we're in for a stretch of a lot of green flag racing up towards the front. And as we know, this first 150 laps has proven that those leaders like to swap that lead back and forth, as Sepker enjoys a little bit of a lead now. But Tristan Wood's right there, up 24 spots on the day. And with 100 laps to go here, Rich, that's my pick to win, is Tristan Wood to finish this one out. He's climbed all the way up after starting from the 26th position. He's right there with a great chance to win this one.
Absolutely, he is, and we're going to keep an eye out on this 11 car as he's now up to second, the highest position he's been in all day, but he wants to go just that one more spot higher. Sefker has been doing a really good job at just leading the way here and controlling this race. Again, we haven't seen that much today where there's been a lot of swapping of the lead and stuff like that, but Sefker seems comfortable here right now, just saying, you know what? No, I'm just going to lead this race. I'm going to run up front. I am going to burn a little bit more fuel, but I feel better about running up front than I do swapping positions with any one of you guys. So, I mean, let's see how this plays out. Obviously, with these guys now they're 30 laps into this run, they're going to get close to 44 to 45 laps on a run for guys in the draft. For Sefker, it could be as few as maybe 41 or 42 laps, maybe even 40. So look within the next 10 laps or so that this 45 car on your screen could potentially be coming down pit road.
Yeah, and I think that window for pit stops will open up here, as you mentioned, in about 6 to 7 laps. It'll be interesting to see if Sefker, who's leading, will come down the pit road first, if he'll be the first guy to peel off. We saw Frankenfield do that on the last green flag cycle through at pit stops, and he ended up getting out about 0.2 of a second faster than the rest of the field. So maybe if you're the leader, you're okay with coming down the pits first before everybody else, and you're kind of having that clean entrance, that clean exit with an empty pit road. With Ragan running their second, him and Wood are swapping back that second and third position back and forth. Pinheiro, a guy that we've mentioned in that orange car, running fourth. He's just kind of buying his time. He's had a really good day so far. He's going to be in contention towards the end. So when you look at his top five, you've got guys that just really didn't qualify well. With Sefker qualifying outside of the top 10, Tristan Wood, Porto right there currently in fourth. Pinheiro now down to fifth. So got a lot of guys that have been making moves. So we see another pass here. Pinheiro going right back for that fourth position, and he'll snag it right back in that orange car. So I think we'll start seeing pit stops, as we mentioned here, over the next 5 to 6 laps. Who will be that first one to make the move? If I'm Sefker out leading this race, I'm going down pit road first. Make sure that I have a clean entrance, a clean exit. There's nobody in front of me, nobody behind me. It's just simply me. Come down pit road, hit your marks. We saw on that first pit stop, Rish, guys did not hit their marks. It led to some chaos, some wrecks on the pit road. So you almost got to be perfect here coming in. And we'll see, as it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, Pinheiro down the pit road coming in. He might be the first guy, or he just either really got low. Maybe he just got low there before coming in. So still the leaders up front, not taking it to the pits yet. But again, over this next 5 to 6 laps, we'll definitely see the leaders down pit road.
Yeah, we definitely expect to see them in here fairly shortly. But I have to imagine it's going to be Sefker who comes in first. But what's interesting here, and I've been making some of these parallels here throughout the night because we just finished, of course, our Daytona 500. It's been a long week for me up in the booth on Wednesday. But at a track like that, I mean, you are required to pit with a partner or at least a group of other cars because of how powerful the draft is here. And while the draft is powerful, it seems to balance itself out in the corners, because I think if you're running behind another car around this racetrack, yes, you get that great slipstream down the straightaway, but through the corners, you can definitely see the significantly greater aerodynamic wash that you get over your car. So you're having to lift more in cars behind. So there is still benefit to pitting on your own, of course, like you mentioned, to that clean pit stall and all of that. And you don't really have as many of the disadvantages of not having a drafting partner exiting pit road there. So again, that opens up pit strategy quite a bit for these drivers if you're Sefker, and you've seen that, okay, pitting early actually does give you an advantage. As soon as your pit window opens, in my eyes, to make it to the end on however many stops they need here, it would probably be another 3 stops to make it to the end here. That's kind of what you're looking at to say, okay, as soon as that window opens up, I want to take that opportunity.
Yeah, and we saw in the last stint where a couple of drivers had hit pit row and the leaders were still out, and then a yellow came out and it really screwed up their cycle. But we also saw, because it was that last yellow came out when the next quick car merged back on the back straightaway, another car went to the inside. It was an aggressive move. So you're in and out lap, and where you come out there down the back straightaway is important. And right now with this green flag cycle, you've got a lot of lap cars in front of you. So no matter when you pit, you should be able to come out with somebody within enough of a distance to get you that tow and to get you up to speed quickly. As we know, it takes about a lap for these cars to get back up to speed after coming out of the pits as we hit lap 160 with 90 to go here. Looks like Harleman has made a move there in 6th spot. He gets around Mark Murphy. A nice little battle here going for the 6th, 7th, and 8th spot. Ragon has now fallen back. He was just inside of the top 3. He's moved back to the 9th spot. So maybe a moment there for the 32 car, who has had a really consistent day inside of the top 5. But he finds himself now in the 9th position. And Mark Murphy, a guy like Tristan Wood, has made his way up consistently through the field, now finds himself 7th. So you're at the point of the stint now where your car's starting to fall off. Your car's a lot lighter than what it was 30 laps ago because the fuel has burned off. The tires are starting to go away. You're chasing that car up the track as we see some of these cars start on the apex going inside the low line in the 3, and then by the time they're in the middle, it looks like the leader here, Sepker, will be the first guy on the pit road, as we just talked about, Rich. If you want to go ahead and call this stop, the first guy to come in, which has seemed to be the advantage so far in this race.
Yeah, we'll see how this advantage plays out for Sefker. He leads a few cars who are further down the order onto pit road, but this is really the one that we're paying attention to. Nice and easy into his box, hits his marks just right. We'll take a look at what the time is stationary, because that really is what matters at the end of it. Drops down, bit of a slow stop there, 9.8 seconds. A good stop we expect here to be about 8.5 seconds. So could lose about a total second there. Maybe didn't quite hit his marks with his pit crew. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Though coming down early could still give him a bit more of an advantage now that he has fresh tires. So Tristan Wood takes over the lead for the first time today, but that's going to be pretty short-lived with Adriano Pinheiro now diving to the inside. Though let's see how long it takes for either of these two drivers now to make it down pit road.
And I thought it was a little bit of an early stop for Sepker, but that's the most that we've really seen a car lead over a long green flag run. So obviously a little bit more fuel being burned off when you're the leader, putting that hole into the air and kind of moving the air around. So, and here's what we talked about. This is where we saw the yellow last time, is merging onto the backstretch, going 3 wide for the lead, trying to continue to gain momentum. And if you're trying to pit this lap or next lap, you've got lap traffic to your inside, as it looks like Wood dives down pit road for his stop. But
Tristan Wood
locks it up and he hits the wall coming in. So a big mistake there for Tristan Wood. And I don't know if there's damage on that car. It looks like there is. A hell of a run so far for Wood. Might have just went all for naught as he locked him up coming into the pits, and it looked like he made contact with an inside wall.
Yeah, let's see how long this stop is for Tristan Wood. Did he get away with anything there, or is that their damage to that 11 car? He's stationary for quite a bit of time here. There's definitely damage there, and that's going to really hurt his chances. Again, green flag pit stops here, and that's the last thing you want to see there. Tristan Wood, who was having such a great run, it could come to an end here. We'll see how long that damage is for him, as I believe he does finally get rolling. No, he doesn't. He's still stationary.
Yeah, Pinheiro now, the leader, he comes into the pits. He inherited a lead, and Pinheiro, we've been talking about him a little bit. He's been consistently there in 3rd or 4th or 5th, and sometimes it's the war of attrition in this race and just not making mistakes, and sometimes the race will fall into your lap. And right now with Pinheiro, that's what he's done. I mean, Frankenfield going out, and now some other cars that have been up towards the front, like Wood. Now we'll see where Pinheiro cycles through with Sefker, who was the original leader that started off this pit cycle. We will see how quickly he catches up as Pinheiro now merges on the backstretch. There's Sefker coming off of turn number 2. So we should see a drag race here for the lead come down the back straightaway with Pinheiro now merging. They'll go side by side into turn 3. Sefker will take the inside line, make the pass easily. Pinheiro not quite up to full speed, and we'll see before the pit stop started, Pinheiro was about 0.4 of a second back. But remember, he was the 3rd place car, not the 2nd place car. So we'll see if this lead goes back and forth. But the Sefker should be able to get some distance between him and that 2nd place car of Pinheiro.
Absolutely. So Pinheiro, though, potentially the winner out of this here, as he's now very much in a battle Pinheiro very much in a battle here with Sefker. Both those guys get by Victor Del Porto, who was the last car who was yet to pit here. So with that, everybody coming down pit road between lap 160, lap 165. should mean that we only have to deal with one more pit stop, if I'm correct there. Sefker might actually be the guy who's in the tightest position there in terms of pit strategy because of how early he came down pit road. We've seen guys run as long as 44, 45 lap stints. They're really going to have to stretch at those 44, 45 laps if we go green all the way to the end.
Yeah, and this is where maybe you don't want to lead as compared to what we saw with Sefker in that last stint where he led throughout the entire stint. But again, he pitted about 2 to 3 laps earlier than the rest of the field. And what we've learned in this series is these races usually go green more than not, and you don't get that yellow flag to maybe cycle back up towards the front. So if I'm Pinheiro right now, Del Porto in third, De Groot in fourth, I'm just going to bide my time, save a little bit of fuel, not make drastic moves to get up towards the front, and really set myself up to have a little bit more fuel to maybe go an extra lap or two on that last stint, barring any yellows. So I'm just going to settle in right now. You know, we got to lap 170. You got 80 laps to go. Not make any mistakes, and really just save a little bit of fuel on this last stint to set you up to have the best chance to win in that last stint. So I think we will probably see one more yellow, which may lead to 2 more pit stops. But again, we've been clean and green since about lap 125 or so. I thought we went right back to green at the halfway point of this race. So it's been green for about 45 to 46 laps now.
Yeah, they've been doing a good job here at kind of keeping it green and also racing really well with each other. So that's been great to see there, where the racing's been clean but competitive all throughout. But right now, with this long run here of green flag, in green flag conditions, you're really settling in, and fuel saving becomes a really big deal. And so that's kind of the trend that we're potentially going to see this race move towards. A caution could certainly very quickly shake that up. But right now it seems like a just kind of ride situation. But again, for Sefker, it's an interesting strategy here where he just wants to go out there and lead. And you can see how much he's gapped Adriano Pinheiro, who admittedly fell behind Chad Frankenfield, is having a little bit of struggles there, lapping the former race leader. But yeah, there's quite a bit of separation there, and that's some of the most separation we've seen generally all race long.
And it looks like there's 14 cars remaining on the lead lap. So a lot of fast cars still on the lead lap. Other drivers that have fallen off. You know, Tristan Wood have just had that incident on the pit road. It looks like he has fallen officially a lap down. So some of the faster cars have had things not go their way, like Frankenfield. So again, I'm looking at a Del Porto right now, who just kind of has ran a smooth, steady race, has stayed inside of the top 3 throughout the entire race so far, and putting himself in a really good position to be around towards the front. So really looking forward to it. Excited to be here as we are about 75 laps away from the checkered flag. I know I've mentioned this before, and a big thanks for everybody who has supported and went and checked out burnoutsports.com. A lot of great IndyCar content there, and we're going to battle into this iRacing world and partner alongside Elite Racing League. Love being here for the new track record 500, and I think we're setting ourselves up for a really good finish, which is, I'm assuming, what we'll see in a lot of these races in the NTT IndyCar Series coming up in 2022.
Absolutely. There's a lot to look forward to, and another one of those things to look forward to for us as a league is bringing in new sponsors every single year. So, of course, having Burnout Sports and yourself with us, Tony, has been great, and looking forward to the way this shapes out this season. But, of course, in terms of premier sponsors across the entirety of the Elite Racing Leagues, Powerhouse Recycling coming on this year has been great for us. Powerhouse Recycling is a company that strives to offer the highest level of customer service in the industry for each load processed time and time again. Attainable account representatives, prompt and on-time pickups, and customized recycling solutions keep Powerhouse Recycling as a North Carolina market leader in customer service. They believe in quality customer service before, during, and after the processing of a client's material, and they strongly believe through their superior customer service, customized recycling, and complete transparency that they can earn their clients' businesses and hold longevity in their business relationships. Check out Powerhouse Recycling. Again, another great partner on board with us, a new premier sponsor here in the Elite Racing Leagues, and they really keep all of these leagues growing. That will allow us to continue to expand, bring on new sponsors, bring in new drivers, and it can allow us to continue to bring you guys these productions here on the Elite Racing Network.
And really excited for the season to come for both the Elite Racing Series and as well as the NTT IndyCar Series. Really exciting race so far here this afternoon. And we saw the other night with the iRacing Challenge just how serious some of these real drivers take it. And I know a lot of guys out there today battling for this win, trying to get themselves off to a good start on the season. Sefker still currently leading, just like he did most of that last stint, has moved himself up nicely after starting outside of the top 10. He's got a 1.2 second lead over Pinheiro, who I think is doing what he needs to do. Just bide your time, relax, don't make any drastic moves until that last stint. Running currently third, Del Porto. He's also had a really good race. Nick DeGroot, as you mentioned, who's had some good luck and some bad luck in the season over the last year. He finds himself inside of the top 5 in striking distance. And then Joel Hallman there. He's gained a lot of spots. Was almost involved in an incident earlier in a spin. Finds himself inside of the top 5. James Kennedy having a good run. A guy we haven't really talked about too much here in this running. He's 6th. Mark Murphy currently 7th. Musselman 8th. It's like Fortner is 9th. And Alex B. Balvez is currently in 10th. So a lot of drivers still with the shot to win this. As we've learned here over the last probably 50 or so laps, anything can happen. But a big lead here so far for Sefker as he has pushed it to almost 2 seconds as these guys from about 2nd, 3rd, and 4th on back continue to battle throughout the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, the most intriguing battle to me seems to be this battle for second place, because it's between Pinheiro, Del Porto, and DeGroot. Sefker's really separated himself from this lead group, 1.8 seconds now ahead of Adriano Pinheiro, but Pinheiro now only sits about 0.3 of a second ahead of Victor Del Porto, who in turn is only about 1.5 of a second ahead of Nick DeGroot. So very much the battle is alive here for these podium positions, at least at this stage in the race. But this could very well be a race for the lead of the races. Look at that, a bit of a move there for Pinheiro, maybe thinking about defending, but nowhere to go. And Del Porto goes right around the outside. That 56 car maybe struggling a little bit down the straightaway, as DeGroot also joining around the outside there, as Adriano Pinheiro in the span of 2 corners loses 2 positions.
And as we talked about, DeGroot is a guy that has kind of been under the radar so far during this race at Fontana. And he's a guy that knows how to get it done, can run up towards the front. And Del Porto currently in the 2nd spot. Sometimes a couple guys up front fall back, and all of a sudden you go from running 5th and 6th throughout the day to being in contention. So I'll be really interesting to see what Sefker does here, because maybe these guys running 2nd and 3rd, like the group Del Porto, decide, hey, we want to be the first driver on pit road, because we've seen the leader come in first and gain about 2 to 3 of a second during their out lap, and then that lap where the driver who was 2nd merges back out on the backstretch after their pit stop. So we'll see if some of these guys that are 2nd, 3rd, or 4th decide, hey, we want to be the first cars on the pit road, because we've seen that has been the strategy that has played out the best so far as we inch closer to lap 185 with 67 laps to go here. And we've been green, Rish, as you know, since about lap 125. So with not a lot of cautions, these drivers doing a great job of keeping all 4 tires on it, and really making this a fun green flag race, especially the last 50 to 75 laps or so.
It's been a really intriguing race, and we'll see how it continues to play out. This is the biggest gaps we've seen throughout the field. And that comes just through this being a long green flag run. Guys start to separate from each other, but you're still going to see some great battling like we've got right here. Victor Del Porto and Nick DeGroot now going back and forth here for 2nd position. Let's see if they can maybe draft off of each other and try and close that gap from to Nate Sefker in the lead. It's right now sitting at 2 seconds is the gap that Sefker's pulled out to. Though these guys have also really gapped Adriano Pinheiro, who I think has been struggling these last few laps. Last time around was a 1/10 of a second slower than both DeGroot and Del Porto. And Del Porto, DeGroot, and Sefker kind of in a league of their own in terms of lap times, but Pinheiro really dropping off from this group. So maybe great speed on this 56 car, but might not have the longevity over the course of a stint with maintaining his tire wears or things like that. So all things you have to pay attention to in a 500-mile race, and that could hurt Pinheiro if we have a long green flag run all the way to the end.
Yeah, definitely. And they were all battling there for second, third, and fourth. So maybe something happened where you had to lift, or again, somebody chopped that air off in front of you. If I'm DeGroot and Pinheiro and those guys right now that are inside of that top 5, I'm just going to kind of get into a line here, get into a rhythm, follow the guy in front of me, and try to work forward, because as we know, Sefker's got the fastest car right now. He's up to a 2.2 second lead. Before the last green flag stops, it was about a 1.8 second lead. So he continues to put more and more distance between him and the rest of the field. And if this thing goes green, those 2 seconds that he has gained so far right now and getting that lead up to 2.2 could mean the length of the win here. As you can see him go by there with the lead, and then there's second and third, fourth going by. So Sefker doing a great job of running qualifying laps, not looking in his mirrors, just focusing forward and trying to put down the fastest laps you can. You want that gap to get bigger and bigger and bigger as you come up on this, possibly the last pit stop, but certainly the second to last pit stop of the afternoon.
Yeah, so we'll keep following this battle up front, but moving through the field here, James Kennedy, Mark Murphy close together on the racetrack as well, just looking back and seeing what close battles we have on the track. Though, as I say that, it looks like Kennedy's actually gotten past Mark Murphy and is starting to gap him already. Meanwhile, you go a little bit further back, it's Alec Balvans and Justin Fortner. These guys battling it out for the last 2 spots inside the top 10. Again, 2 guys that we haven't really talked about tonight, just kind of who've been running quiet races, but this is part of it, right? This race of attrition. You have 500 miles. You have all of this stuff going on with a lot of these top drivers we've talked about here, running into issues, having problems, and having to park their cars. This gives opportunities for the guys like this to shine, where Alec Balvans, you look at his fastest lap of the race. All right, that's not the fastest that we've seen tonight here. However, he's been consistent. He's been running solid lap times the entire race long, and is right now looking at a top 10 finish, potentially even better, because he's stayed out of trouble. He's done everything right. He's not made mistakes on pit road, and that's the kind of race you need to run around these tracks sometimes. Yes, obviously it helps to sometimes have pace, but that's not going to be the end-all be-all. And that's what's really great about these full-distance, long races around here, is it's not all about being a fast driver. That's one part of the equation to winning one of these races, but you have to have the entire package. You have to be consistent. You have to save your fuel well. You have to save your tires well. You have to battle with others at the right moments. Pick your moments in terms of when you make moves. It all comes together. You have to really be the full package to win a race like this, and that's allowing us to kind of see what these drivers are. And of course, you do still need to be lucky. We've seen some drivers have some bad luck tonight, but the way it's playing out right now, I mean, this gap dropping down to 1.3 up front as well. So this race could get very interesting up front here pretty soon, especially with us once again approaching green flag pit stops within the next 10 to 15 laps.
Yeah, and if you look at, as you mentioned, I mean, you think about the 500 last year, nobody really talked about Elio being a threat until about 75 to lap 100. So you got to be there at the end. As Scott Goodyear always said on the broadcast, you can't win the race in the first turn, but you can certainly lose it. And we'll see the drop off here. I believe it's about a 5-lap difference between the time that Sefker pitted and then Del Porto and DeGroot. I think we're 4 or 5 laps later. So that's why it was important for Sefker to really burn as much as he could to get that gap, as we saw him push it up to about 2.3 seconds. But now the car is starting to fall off as the tire wear continues to get deeper and deeper into this run. He's not too far away, as we're 33 laps into this stint. We mentioned about lap 38 or lap 39 is when that pit window indeed opens up. So we see him kind of coming back to the field a little bit here. And again, he pitted on lap 160 to where the guys second, third, fourth, and fifth pitted on either lap 164 or lap 165. And that doesn't seem like too much different, 5 laps, but that could really be the difference between having to pit Robbie Gordon style with about 1 or 2 laps to go, or being able to stay out under green as we are approaching lap 195. So 55 laps to go. I think we're in the window now, Rich, where you can simply come down pit road, maybe run as far as you can on this stint, but you might be able to stretch this field the rest of the way if you can go another, 9 to 10 laps, which is, I think, where these guys are. So it'll be really close. And if this thing goes green, Rich, we could be seeing some guys really saving fuel to try to get to the end.
Absolutely, and I think you're right on there with about 9 to 10 laps just being the edge of the window. So if you're Nate Sefker, you're looking at that graphic on the bottom right of your screen, and you're pretty nervous about that right there, because that last green flag stint where he led the entire way, he only got 39 laps completed there. So that means he just has 5 more here. You can't run 50 laps on a tank of fuel here. He's going to have a caution or have to do some ridiculous fuel saving to make it 5 extra laps there, assuming he's running the same fuel trim and has the same fuel consumption that he had on that last stint. If you're someone like Victor Del Porto, you're looking a little bit more comfortable, right? 44 laps on that last stint. You've got another maybe 14 laps or so on this stint. You're well within the window at that point. So you're a lot more comfortable than that. Same thing with Nick DeGroot. I think you're still pretty comfortable there with 43 for Pinheiro. The second through fifth are guys that I'm maybe a little bit more comfortable with. Sefker in first. He's been doing a great job and has been so quick up front, but I'm nervous for that 45 car right there, that leader, because he's been burning through a lot of fuel up front.
And if I'm a spotter, I'm the race strategist right now for Del Porto or DeGroot. I'm saying, look, this is where you have to be patient, especially when this thing cycles back through on the next set of pit stops. This stint started and we saw Sefker get up to about a 2.3 second lead. And now later on in the stint, it's been the last 2 or 3 laps between 7 and 9/10 of a second. So if you're Del Porto, you've got to tell yourself, I've got to be patient on this next stint. As much as I want to get the lead immediately, this last stint where we're getting ready to come up on these pit stops and lap number 200, the second, third, fourth place cars, Pinheiro, DeGroot, Del Porto, they've really been making up a lot of distance. And now, as we see on lap 199, it's Sefker, the leader, coming in. So he certainly won't be able to make it to the distance unless we get a couple yellow flags without pitting again. We'll see how long Del Porto stays out. Remember, he stayed out 5 laps later than when Sefker pit. So, Rich, we'll go down to you as the leader comes in for a pit stop.
Yeah, so Sefker on his marks just fine there. Shouldn't be too worried about that, but the thing you should be worried about if you're Nate Sefker or his crew chief is how the heck do you make it now 51 laps in this race without a caution? That there's got to be a solution there, but right now they have their work cut out for them, because that, I believe, is going to be back-to-back stints there where they only completed about 39 laps. Let's take a look there again. Don't see it quite on our stint strategy there. We'll see if we can expand that, but yeah, I mean that just goes to show you.
It was 39 laps. His last pit stop was on lap number 160.
Yep.
So he's gone 39 laps. So he's going to need either one lengthy yellow, or more than likely 2 yellows that equal up to be about 10 to 11 laps. Under yellow, these cars can get about 2 more laps under yellow than what they would under green when it comes to the fuel mileage. But yeah, out there running by himself as he merges back onto the track, he's not able to get into anybody's toe to maybe lift off the throttle a little bit, maybe get into the throttle a little bit later into the turn. So the Sefker, who has ran a really good race, especially here late, the fuel mileage not playing into his hands. But on the flip side of that coin, DeGroot, Del Porto, Pinheiro are guys that are stretching this out. We should see DeGroot come in here over the next 2 to 3 laps. Del Porto might be able to make it a little bit longer than DeGroot. Maybe he stays out that extra lap. So we'll see if the 27 car of Del Porto will stay out a little bit longer, maybe 1 or 2 more laps than DeGroot, because you could maybe gain a lap or 2 throughout a 35-lap stint of fuel mileage by simply being second or third and having that car in front of you that you can tow off of it and get that slipstream draft to maybe let you be a little bit more lighter on the throttle going into the corner and get back on that throttle a little bit later. So DeGroot currently leads. Del Porto is second. Pinheiro third. Musselman, who hasn't pitted yet, moves up to fourth. Sepker now is sixth. So again, we will see who he is. He is now back up to full speed. Got some cars diving down pit road and some smoke there for DeGroot, who is currently third as he hits the pits here, Rish.
Yeah, so Nick DeGroot coming down pit road, still a little bit tight on fuel. I'm not too comfortable if that's Nick DeGroot. You can, I think, save to make it 46 laps, but that again, that's going to be pretty tight, I think, based off of the stint length we've seen. I start to look at this now, and I look at Victor Del Porto as potentially the guy who's a favorite if this stays green, as he now comes to pit road. Let's see as he slows it down, makes it to the cone, and slows enough. But yeah, Del Porto, I mean, Pinheiro actually even staying out there for another lap as well, so he could have the longevity. But I think you had to make it to lap 205 to even be within a shot. Nick DeGroot might have come in a lap early, and he might have to do some extra fuel save there. But I think for Del Porto and Pinheiro, that puts these guys in kind of the prime position. They've shown they've been good at saving fuel already, and now they've made it the furthest into this race, and are the only ones within the windows. Pinheiro, though, he locks them up. He's going to spin it. He keeps it pointed in the right direction. That's going to hurt his time. As long as he didn't speed, though, coming down pit road, he should at least still be able to come out relatively close to the other drivers around him.
Hell of a save there, but again, yeah, you're going to lose at least 2 to 3 seconds in gathering that car back up, getting pointed in the right direction. A great save, though, to keep it off of the wall. It looked like he was going to that inside wall. So now you certainly got to hit your marks perfectly. Hope you don't get a speeding penalty. And Pinheiro, who you had just mentioned, the race was kind of falling into his lap. Now all of a sudden, Sepker will take the lead back. But maybe a guy like DeGroot or Del Porto is going to find themselves, if they can stretch that fuel mileage with 44 laps to go. I think it's close. As of right now, if I'm the race strategist, I'm thinking go as hard as you can, because nobody's going to be able to make it the rest of the way on fuel.
Yeah, so this really opens things up now, doesn't it, in terms of how this race finishes here. Again, this is all under the assumption that we stay under green flag conditions, which for 45 laps, that's a big ask, I think, sometimes, especially in the late parts of this race where drivers are starting to feel that mental fatigue. You become more prone to making mistakes, things like that. So it could still happen here, but we've had this great green flag run. Guys have stayed clean all throughout the race so far tonight, and so it's fair to assume that we can go the next 45 laps with staying clean as well. But if that's the case, then if you're Sepker, I think you're in a bad spot. If you're Del Porto, I think you're tight. If you're DeGroot, I think you're really tight. And if you're Pinheiro, I think you're the only person who might not be extremely tight, but you also just made that mistake and are now 2.5 seconds behind everybody else. So, it's tough, but what we are seeing is a clear distinction between the top 4 drivers in the rest of this field, because AJ Musselman in 5th place is 10 seconds back from Adriano Pinheiro. I think the winner, no matter what happens on fuel strategy, will come from this top 4 group.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if you're Pinheiro. Yeah, you lost a little bit of ground, but at the end of that run, you went a lap or two more than anybody else. So look, you're not going to race your way to the lead at this point. So can you feather that throttle a little bit to save as much fuel as possible? You know, the old Alexander Rossi. Can you clutch and coast a little bit? Can you gain a lap or two of fuel over this stint? That might be the difference between you running out, coming to the white flag, or running out, coming to the checkered flag. And if you run out coming off of 4 and you've got a pretty good lead, you might be able to coast away. If I'm Sepker, I've already made the decision that I'm not going to be able to make it. And more than likely, this race is going green the rest of the way. So I'm just going to go as fast as I can and try to make up as much ground as I can, so that on the back end, when I do pit, I can get out front and maybe still win this thing. But it's going to be tough for him to do. Like you mentioned, DeGroot, he not probably going to do it. And we are 85 laps on this green flag run. So you have to assume, as the race strategist, that this thing is going to stay green, because that's just simply the way that it's gone over the last 85 to 90 laps. So If I'm Sefker, I'm just going. Probably the same for DeGroot and Del Porto. But Pinheiro, again, even though he had that miscue coming into the pits, it really didn't seem to cost him horribly. And now he's got an extra lap of fuel over everybody else. Unfortunately, as we see here, there's really nobody in front of him to be able to get that draft off of. But I'm just simply going, okay, I'm not too far away from the lead, and I've got a 7-second gap over fifth place, so I've got some wiggle room to be able to maybe back off a little bit. And as we saw, Sefker on that last stint built a lead of about 2.7 seconds, but then that went all the way down to about 0.7. So if I'm Pinheiro, I'm just going to feather the throttle a little bit, not as much as maybe to lose a second or so a lap, but I can afford right now to give up 0.2 of a second a lap if it means that I gain 1 or maybe possibly 2 more laps on this green flag run. So it is certainly going to get interesting here over this final 35 laps or so, and we're in for one heck of an exciting finish.
I think we absolutely are here. Sefker, who's still 1.3 seconds up the road. Lap time-wise, he's a little bit slower than the 2 cars behind him, but I don't think it's significant enough right now where it's going to save him enough to make it to the end of this race. So let's continue to see how he adjusts that, though. Another 32.8. Meanwhile, on that last lap, Victor Del Porto put in a 32.5. I mean, that is significant difference now we're starting to see in lap time. But, of course, that means that those guys behind are starting to get quite a bit closer on the racetrack. So it's all a balancing act here, but I think you're going to have to go full-on fuel save mode for Sefker if you want to make it. It's either that or you've got to start pushing hard now and expect to go for a splash at the end of this race.
Yeah, and again, the more fuel that you can, at this point, you know you're not making it. So you burn as much fuel as you can, and therefore your tank is fully empty. You may not need as much as everybody else to get to the finish. And if I know that everybody else is coming down to take fuel at the end, I want to make sure that on lap 247, 248, 249, and 250, I'm full power up to speed while everybody else is cycling in and out of the pits.
Yeah, so here we go, 216 of 250. We keep ticking through the laps here. Every 30 seconds, every 32 seconds, really, we're putting down a new lap. And so the final stage of this race is going to go by very, very quickly here. I expect the final parts of this to go by approximately just 15 more minutes left in this race, barring any cautions, barring any unforeseen circumstances there. So yeah, I mean, this can play out in so many different ways. Keeping an eye on Musselman, he is losing ground, though, and the pace that he's running isn't significantly slower. That tells me that, okay, maybe he's in massive fuel save. So it's hard to look at fifth place on back as options there as you look at guys. How far did they run last stint? Okay, Pinheiro clearly ran the furthest there, 41 laps completed, did 43 laps the lap before. And Pinheiro, when did he come down pit road? 205. So to make it 41 laps, that's a little bit short. So could it be everybody's realized now that they're short, and now it's just flat out, and everybody's going to have to go for a splash here?
Yeah, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you get inside of that window and you say, all right, from here on out, which would be about right here, with 38 laps to go, 28 laps, 38 laps to go. 32 laps to go. I'm bad at math. You're inside of that window, right? So if you're running 5th, 6th, or 7th, you know you're not going to get to the front to win this thing. So maybe you come in and you get the fuel that it's going to take to get you the distance. Therefore, maybe you get a yellow and everybody has to come back down depending on how the laps work out. If it's a quick yellow, maybe everybody still has to pit. So there is some strategy to maybe come in early in this stint as we've got 30 laps to go. Maybe there is some strategy from about 7th, 8th, or 9th on down where they say, okay, we know we're not going to make it. So would we rather pit on lap 245 with everybody else, or maybe pit now? But the problem with that is you're so far back, you might end up going a lap down. So some different strategy calls here being made on the fly, and that's why those engineers they get paid the big bucks there in the timing stand.
Yeah, that's absolutely why, and It's so tricky. And for some of these guys, I know as well. I mean, you're the driver and the crew chief here, so you're not only driving around this racetrack at virtually 220 miles an hour, but you're also thinking now, running the calculations in your head. All right, what do I need to do here to actually make this fuel last all the way?
Yeah, and again, if you're Steph Curry, you've decided we're not making it. We simply can't, especially being out front as the leader. Sometimes being the leader is the greatest thing in the world. Sometimes it's not the greatest thing in the world, and right now it's certainly not the greatest because you're burning up the most fuel with that 1.1 second lead. So we'll see if Del Porto itches closer to the front of the field. And guys like DeGroot and Pinheiro who are kind of just sitting back going, all right, maybe we can make it, but I would be stunned if Pinheiro saved enough fuel to earn about 2 or 3 more laps. That would make this about a 43 to 44 lap run, which we've seen barely done so far throughout this race. So if I'm Pinheiro, I've got to realize, all right, I've got still a pretty big gap on the guy behind me. And the leaders are still not too far in front of me, so I can make this. And we're not going to know, Rich, if they've made the right call. If you're Pinheiro, if he saved enough until the last moment. So, we remember those races at Fontana and Michigan back in the day with the kart drivers running out of fuel. I think Max Pappas was leading, and then he ran out of fuel, and Tony Kanaan was leading, and he ran out of fuel there towards the end. So with just about 25 laps to go, I'm not sure that anybody outside of Pinheiro has a chance to not pit and make it the rest of the way. And Pinheiro it's a coin flip, right? Can we do it? Do you risk it and go for the gamble, or do you simply come down pit road and get that fuel to get you to the end?
Yeah, the problem if you're Pinheiro right now is you can get those numbers. He's shown you can get those numbers, but I think you're still going to need some drafting help. And right now, he's all on his own on the racetrack. A second up the road is Nick DeGroot, but that's not going to be enough to really pull you down the straightaways here. Maybe getting a little bit of draft support, but really, not enough for Pinheiro.
And at that point, are you just going too slow? You remember Dario Franchitti back in 2010 trying to stretch the fuel, and he took the white flag, leading the race at like 207 miles an hour, and the rest of the field, I believe it was Dan Weldon in second, was charging, and it took a yellow flag, that Mike Conway incident, to seal the win. Same for, remember, J.R. Hildebrand was saving fuel. Alexander Rossi was almost too slow. He went through turn 2, and it was almost like the engine was shut off. So, you stretch that out. But at this point, with 25 to go, Rich, and I'm Pinheiro, I know that I'm not winning this race unless I take that gamble. I have to stay out when everybody else pits. So at this point, I've probably made my bet and thought, all right, save. The only way I'm winning this thing is if everybody else pits and I can stretch it out. So I think that's the strategy for Pinheiro. Just look, let's just stay out, save as much as we can, and sacrifice a 5th place finish. Because you're only going to fall back to what? On the lead lap, 10th, 11? Is there 11 cars on the lead lap, it looks like? So you're really only going to lose 5 or 6 spots. So I think the gamble is certainly worth it here, just to stay out and see if you can make it.
Yeah, well, while Pinheiro contemplates that, the battle for the lead of the race is on between the drivers we think will all have to pit just one more time in this race, and that's going to be Sefker, Del Porto, and DeGroot, all separated by just a 1/10 of a second from each other. Now Del Porto goes to the inside on Sefker, or excuse me, to the outside of Sefker there. Doesn't quite get the move done that time by. That's the lapped car up top, excuse me there, as Del Porto's on the bottom following. But look at just how close these guys all are. DeGroot has to go up the racetrack. Oh, almost loses it coming off of turn number 2. Checks up behind Alexander Van de Sant, but he keeps in it. So Nick DeGroot staying in there just very close there to bring out another caution. But yeah, this battle for the lead is very much on right now. Sefker, who's potentially been pushing here, is still losing time to these 2 drivers behind him, and right now this could be the battle for the race lead if Pinheiro's not able to make it to the end.
Well, and look who just caught that pack in 5th is Pinheiro as he makes a move on the lap car. And look, these guys battling first, second, and third is really helping Pinheiro, because now all of a sudden he can suck up and get that draft and get that push to maybe save some fuel a little bit and be a little bit more lighter on that pedal, knowing that I'm not going to go race these guys in front of me because I don't think they can make it, and I'll be the driver that's able to stay out and push this about 2 or 3 more laps further than everybody else, knowing that he pitted on lap 205 and everybody else pitted on lap 198, 204, and 203 in front of him. So go ahead and battle it out in front of me, but I'm not going to pass you guys or be in any kind of hurry. I'm just going to suck up right here. It'd be interesting to see if he does make a pass here. That's a lap car, so certainly that makes a lot of sense. But the group right there in front of me may as well just stay in line and just focus in on stretching out this fuel and maybe coasting yourself to a victory.
Yeah, let's take a look. What is the move here? And there's that lap car again, but Pinheiro, no. He decides against that. He's going to go for the move on Nick DeGroot as DeGroot goes way up high. Pinheiro now slots into third position, so maybe he's pushing for it, but he goes a little bit too high, and DeGroot back at him. I think all of these guys right now are in full-on race mode. I don't think any of them are thinking about fuel saving right now.
And this is the time of the race, as we saw earlier, that you've got to start making the adjustments. You know, you've got to adjust the weight jacker and the balance of the car, because the car gets lighter as the fuel burns off. It gets a little bit more loose as that tire wear goes away. So you've got to make those adjustments inside of the cockpit. And I like what Pinheiro has decided to do here. I'm just going to back off. We saw him go from that low lane all the way up to the top lane. He had to walk that car up the track and keep it off the wall. I think he realized, all right, there's no use in racing these guys in front of me because they're not going to make it, and I can. So let me just stay in their slipstream, get that draft as we see Sefker decide he's coming in for a pit stop here. He relinquishes the lead, and he will come in and pit 16 laps short of the finish, and we knew that he would not be able to go the distance.
Yeah, I think I like this call here from Sefker. Give yourself a couple of laps to get back up to speed and kind of maximize the stint here. He is going to have to take on maybe a little bit more fuel than he'd like to just make it to the end here, but shouldn't be too long of a pit stop. And yeah, gives you the best chance here. You can get back up to speed, and you have a number of laps now. The question is, how does the rest of the field react to it? Victor Del Porto staying out, takes over the lead, and so that means Sefker goes down a lap here. So if a caution comes out, that really messes up his race. It's a bit of a danger zone right there, but also could give him a big lead when it comes down to pitting. If I'm any one of these guys, especially if I'm someone like Pinheiro, I'm thinking of responding right here, right now, because Nick DeGroot, who did come down pit road, actually came out ahead of Nate Sefker. So that was the battle for the lead there. We missed that. DeGroot was also on pit road the lap before. And with an even slower lap or slower stop than Sefker because he had less fuel to take, he's now a second ahead of that 45 car.
If we can click back real quick to Pinheiro, it looked like he had sucked up behind the car in front of him to save a little bit of fuel. Now he goes by, which I believe was a lap car, but he stayed behind about a lap more than maybe he needed to maybe save a little bit of fuel. So I think right now Pinheiro is in full-on save mode to try to make this without pitting as Del Porto takes over the lead by about 1.6 seconds. He pitted one lap before Pinheiro did. That was back on lap 204. Pinheiro pitted on lap 205. So it'll be interesting to see, did Del Porto over this set save enough? But I think him out front and leading with nobody in front of him is going to burn a little bit more fuel, and he'll certainly have to come in.
And remember that what's on the line is not just a race win or a great way to start the season, but it's also the first leg of the Warriors for Peace Triple Crown. Warriors for Peace, as there comes Pinheiro. He does decide to pit, and that means Del Porto's the only car left out on the racetrack. But this is the Warriors for Peace Triple Crown here, and it starts right here at the new track record, Michigan 500. Quick shout out to Warriors for Peace. They're a foundation promoting peaceful change in the world to honor the beautiful life of Jack Shockley. Check out warriorsforpeace.org for more information on that movement there. Their logo on the bottom left of your screen. Supporting that whole series of races there, of course, the Indy 500 coming up later this season, the full Triple Crown. It all kicks off, though, right here. Pinheiro, nice and quick on and off pit road, just 4 seconds stationary, but will he come out fast enough, as Sefker actually does get by Nick DeGroot. So DeGroot ran into some issues, it looked like, and Sefker with the extra pace got by. But now where does Pinheiro come out relative to Sefker? Not far enough ahead. I think that 45 car is going to come out right in front, and he does. So for the battle for the lead, Nate Sefker right now the leader, as Victor Del Porto, though, the only man still out on the racetrack. Finally, he hits pit road.
Yeah, and I think that you got to the point where you look down at the field, if you're Pinheiro, and you saved and you saved and you saved, but you just didn't save enough. And you find that out with about 15 laps to go and say, all right, let's bring it in now. Everybody, the guy who was leading most of this last stint of the race, and Sefker, has already came in. He's on fresh tires. He's about 2 to 3 miles an hour faster than us. So we got to bring it in, see where we cycle out. But now we're going to have a heck of a battle towards the lead. You got Musselman still in the lead. He last pitted on 203. Doesn't seem like he'll be able to make it. Maybe he tries. Maybe he gets that yellow and his thing ends under yellow. That's his only chance to win. But it looks like Sefker will regain the lead if this all cycles back through, with DeGroot second, Pinheiro third, and Del Porto fourth. But you can throw a blanket over those 4 drivers right there. So if this does cycle back through, it'll be Sefker back to the lead. But we'll see if Musselman, is he saved enough. He was about 8th, 9th, or 10th throughout this entire stint, so he probably had some cars in front of him to where that he could save. But I would be very surprised if he can make it from lap 203 and go 48 laps and go the distance on this one tank of fuel.
Yeah, we'll follow this 54 car of AJ Musselman. Didn't talk about him much, but he comes down to pit road, so doesn't go for that late run for the win. So that's going to hand this lead over to Justin Fortner, who's also going to follow Musselman to pit road, and that leaves Nate Sefker to take back over the lead here. So coming off of turn number 4, back up to the front for Sefker, and now it is a straight-up battle between him, DeGroot, Pinheiro, Del Porto, except this time Sefker with 1.7 seconds up front. This is working out really well and perfectly for this 45 car. It really has been perfect. I think if that first caution had come out maybe just 2 or 3 laps later, we could be talking about a completely different story. All those laps to go, but with 10 laps to go here, barring any kind of late race cautions, it's going to be tough for the rest of this field to pick up on Sefker, because he's still gapping these guys by about half a second per lap, that last lap on Nick DeGroot.
Yeah, and this is what he did the last stint. If you remember, he went from having about a 1.2 second lead. He built that thing up to about a 2.3 second lead, but then about 28 laps into that stint, he started to kind of fade back. And remember, before he pitted, it was down to 0.7 of a second. So we'll see how much he falls off here over this last 9 laps, or does he continue to stay pace? He's 2 seconds back. Groot and Pinheiro are not battling for second and third. So it looks like Pinheiro has now fallen back to 4th, and the gap is now up to 2.25 seconds. So if you can get this thing to about 2.7 with 5 laps to go, barring a total loss of your car and a loss of the handling of it, he should be able to win this thing. But I'll be really interested to see where this gap is with about 4 laps to go, as he's starting, as we see, to work on lap traffic.
So here we go, 7 laps to go for Nate Sefker on his debut here in the Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. What a story that would be there in this 500-mile event to show up and really put the rest of the league on notice. Has looked strong all race long, kind of worked his way up towards the top after qualifying just outside of the top 10, and has really just dominated this last green flag run. And as we've gone longer and longer on the green flag runs, he continues to just expand his advantage. 2.7 seconds now over second place Victor Del Porto. There's going to be a great battle going on here between Nick DeGroot and Victor Del Porto, I think, for the second position here, because Adriano Pinheiro is another 1.3 seconds off. But Del Porto's looking like one of the fastest, if not the fastest cars on the racetrack. In fact, he sets the fastest lap of the race just there on that last lap. But could it be too little too late with 6 laps to go, 2.6 seconds to overcome? It could just be too late for Victor Del Porto. It looks all good right now for Nate Sefker. And even if a caution did come out, I don't know if we'd get back to green flag racing within 5 laps of it coming out here. So if you're Nate Sefker, it's cruise and work your way to the end here.
Yeah, and you just hope, and you should have, if you're Nate Sefker, that you got enough fuel in that car when you came in at lap 232. Sometimes, we've seen it in real life in IndyCar. There'll be a guy that hits the fueler with a stick, and he'll count it. Okay, we need 6 seconds of fuel. Hit him with that little stick, and off he goes. So you hope that you got enough fuel in there. Outside of that, it looks like he should win this, as the gap is up to 2.6 seconds with just 4 laps to go. So as long as he's got enough fuel in there, he's clearly got a lighter car than everybody else, as everybody else pitted about 6 or 7 laps later. So Setker, as you mentioned, has ran a really good race. Started just outside of the top 10, but worked his way up from the beginning. Used some of those yellows to his advantage. And after Chad Frankenfield, who really dominated the first portion of this race, and a few other guys fell out, Sepker's done a really good job of staying consistent and battling towards the front here with just 3 laps to go. As long as he can maneuver this traffic as well as he should be able to, I think we're going to see Sepker cruise to a victory here. And like you mentioned, putting this entire field on notice. I'm here. I'm not going away. This is the start of a lot of great things, hopefully, for Setker here in the 2022 season.
Absolutely. Great battle here going on for the 7th position between Balvans and Fortner. These guys, again, 2 guys who've had quiet races but have been consistently just putting in the laps and are going to come out with a solid top 10 for both of them. Shout out as well to Kendall Noah player Craig Forsyth, who kind of round out that top 10. Tristan Wood, we saw, who was strong in that middle portion of this race. Your pick for the win early on, unfortunately hit the wall entering pit road and wasn't the same after that, but did work his way all the way back onto the lead lap. Unfortunately, never had that caution, I think, to kind of fully bring him back into the race. Certainly thinking what could have been, but can also look forward to the rest of the season as promising. But the white flag waves here for Nate Sefker. 1 more lap. It's the Whiskey Cast. Last call, final lap of this new track record, Michigan 500 for Nate Sefker. He's led the most laps tonight since that green flag dropped more than 120 laps ago. It really has been the Nate Sefker show, and he's just dominated from then. Looked like he was going to be short on fuel, but turned out everyone was going to be short on fuel, so that short pit stop, everyone got filled for that, and here he comes off of turn number 4 across the line. Nate Sefker wins the new track record 500 at Auto Club. Wow, what a drive.
Yeah, a great win for him, and a great way to just get towards the end and not worry about anybody else. There was times there that we talked about, do you worry about the fuel? You worry about not making it, and everybody else does. But a great run for him to pick up the victory, and also a great run for Del Porto, who moved up 21 positions to finish 2nd. A great points day for Nick DeGroot as well, who moved up 16 spots to finish on the podium. Pinheiro and Musselman rounding out your top 5. But it's Nate Sefker there in the 45 green and black machine, picking up the first win of the season at Auto Club Speedway.
Yeah, hats off Nate Sefker right there. In 2nd place, Victor Del Porto put in some great lap times right at the end, set the fastest lap of the race as well. So hats off to him, but just unfortunately too little too late in terms of getting past the cars ahead of him and then putting down those laps. But great drive there again from Del Porto, and same from Nick DeGroot. Always kind of in contention. I've got to go back and look at these 500-mile races, because it seems like when he finishes, he's well inside the top 5 on all of those races. And so another top 3 for Nick DeGroot right there, and a 500. And Adriano Pinheiro, P4, thinking possibly what could have been, since he was the guy who challenged Chad Frankenfield early in the race. Looked like it was going to be between just those two when it finally came down to it, but unfortunately, the best he could come away with today was P4, but look out for him, because we know he's always competitive at any racetrack we go to and on the schedule. And then AJ Musselman, shout out to him as well, P5, strong race, looked like he might have been able to make it on fuel, but ultimately had to duck down to pit road to grab that splash, but still to come away with a 5th place finish here tonight after 500 grueling miles. That's still an impressive result.
A nice celebratory burnout there by Nate Sefker. Great run for him. Thanks, everybody, for allowing me and Burnout Sports and burnoutsports.com to be a part of this. It was a lot of fun, the first race of the year, and some donuts there. A nice burnout by Nate Sefker after picking up the victory.
Yeah, and as he gets out of the car, we'll speak to him in victory lane. Nate, congratulations. I believe your first start in the Mega Driver 86 series. You really put the entire league on notice there. looked a little bit scary there for a little bit with the long green flag runs, maybe being a little bit short on gas, but fortunate that everybody, I think, was short on gas there. And so that dominant speed that you were showing all night worked out for you, and then pulling out to that 2-second lead at the end there just to assert that dominance finally. Talk us through tonight and what it feels like to win the first stage of the Triple Crown here in the Elite Mega Driver Series.
Yeah, going 1-for-1 ain't too shabby. I will say that. So, tonight it was a learning experience more than anything, because the first half of the race I was terrible. I really was. I mean, I could not work the traffic at all. I was, understeering into people almost a couple times. So, learning through that first half of the race, preparing me to get to the lead, and once I got to the lead, just working the air was huge in that. So the race, once I got to the lead, was pretty academic. Just managing the air, managing the tires, and the fuel number was a little scary. I thought everyone was going to be close, but it turned out everyone was a lot further away than I was anticipating. So I'll take it though.
Yeah, we thought the same thing. Calling this race, we thought that maybe Pinheiro had the distance to save some fuel. That last stint, when did you realize that everybody else was going to have to come in? And did that play into your strategy to maybe come in a few laps earlier than what you originally thought, to just get out of pit road and just put down some banger laps over that last 20 lap stint?
I was going to run it dry, and then Nick pitted. So then I just covered that threat. And then I was surprised he didn't take tires. So, I mean, if he took tires, I think me and him would have been dueling there at the end. But I think, that was the reason why I pitted when I did. When I knew everybody was I was fine was when Pinheiro and everyone like that pitted. So once that happened, I was pretty confident from there. And then from there, it was just making sure I used that lap traffic that I was in the middle of to not run into them, and then not get run into at that point too.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it was just a great showing from you, and hopefully we're going to be seeing a lot of you throughout this season, and that great looking livery you had as well. And I mean, obviously to come into this new league and to race with these guys, what is it like racing with this group of drivers? We have a lot of new drivers, but we also have a lot of returning guys. Have you raced with any of them before, or was this completely new in terms of who you're racing against, and how'd you feel out there on the track with them?
I mean, a lot of the guys are, in the top fixed stuff. So you got those guys that you race with. You got, some other guys that, don't run that top fix, but are really solid as well. And then that's my first time running with Connor and RC as well, actually. So that was kind of cool, starting alongside Connor there. But yeah, the competition in this league is top notch. For that first half of the race, like I said, when I was struggling, I'm like, I'm barely going to be in the top 5 tonight. And that usually for me is kind of a culture shock. So I was kind of a little concerned, but thankfully, once we got to the lead, it was a little bit easier, thankfully.
And with that, before we let you go, we like to do on the air here, give you a chance to make some shout outs to anybody, teammates, anything that you'd like to here.
Yeah, first off, I'd like to thank E&C and SimMotion. There's 2 great partners for our team that we have as well at FBR Motorsports. Thank Butch Davis for coming into the room there towards the end, helping me out with the strategy. Figuring out how much fuel I needed to finish that race. And then I want to thank my personal sponsors, the Midwest Canyon Warriors. It's great to be able to do these interviews for these platforms, because it's a great support group helping people find living transplants. So whenever I get the opportunity to that, it helps gain exposure for that, to gain awareness that plenty of people need kidneys. So it's always a pleasure to be up here to shout out to them, and Midwest Canyon Warriors is a great group of people there.
All right, congratulations again, man. New track record, Auto Club 500 winner. First leg of the Triple Crown complete. Looking forward to seeing how you play out this season, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, there's your race winner then, Nate Sefker, and we're going to now bring in P2 finisher. Going to bring in Victor Del Porto. Victor, you have a copy?
Yeah.
Victor, congratulations. P2 finish here today. Looked really strong. Set the fastest lap of the race right at the end there. But it seemed like maybe it was just a little too late there. Had great fuel conservation, great fuel strategy. Talk us through the challenges of the race today, and talk us through your thoughts coming home P2.
Good evening, Richard and Tony. It was a great race for me. very difficult because of the difficult to pass. But I got some passes, and in the finish, in the final laps, I did a difficult decision to change tires. I was thinking since I think 50 laps to go or 40 laps to go to don't change tires, but in the last decision, last moment, I changed tires. Was really good to pass Adriano and Nick, but not sufficient to catch Nate.
Do you feel like this race was how you thought it would go? We saw the last 125 laps go green after a couple yellows there in that first stint. Did you expect this thing to go green the rest of the way? And how did that vary your strategy throughout those final 50 or so laps?
I thought it was possible to have many laps in green because of the difficult to pass. So many contacts I saw with the wall, some drivers, but alone. And I thought it was very possible to do so many laps in green.
Yeah, well, it certainly must have been pretty tiring there towards the end. These races get really long. Just talk us through. Are you tired at all after that one? The long green flag run, mentally, physically tired at all?
Well, I'm sweating. In Brazil, it's summer in Brazil, so I'm sweating, and my left hand is kind of strange right now. I'm feeling some kind of I forgot to say how to. I'm in pain. I'm in pain with my left hand.
Yeah, absolutely. No, totally understand that, man. Incredible drive tonight from all of you guys to last that long. It is very demanding on you. And before we let you go here and celebrate P2, want to let you shout out anybody here on the air.
Oh, of course. I want to say thank you to my team, Beneporto Pro Racing. We are sponsored by Pro Racing Simuladores, a Brazilian sim. They produce some items for sim racing, like wells, cockpits, and direct drive, etc. Thank you so much to Sandro Daorius, Thiago Benedetti, Eric Troiano, Carlos Washington, to my family, my mother Lilian, my cousins Julia and Guilherme. I want to invite all of you to follow my Twitch channel, Victor do Porto Race. And that's it.
Oh, all right. Congratulations, Victor. Have a good night.
For you too.
All right, P2 finisher there, Victor Del Porto, and unfortunately doesn't look like we're going to get to speak to our third place finisher, Nick DeGroot, tonight, but still great to speak with the top two finishers there, Tony, and just get an idea. Say it was a pretty grueling race there with what Victor was telling us, and it kind of puts sim racing a little bit into perspective, right? Especially these long ones. It can get very tiring, both mentally and even physically there. So incredible driving by these guys to still be putting in, their fastest laps of the race right at the end of this one here, and to still be racing at that level this late into this race.
Yeah, it's the ultimate test of focus, right? Like you got to keep things in line, worry about lap traffic, and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, this is going to go green for the last 125 laps. So outside of focusing on just the task at hand and what's in front of you, you got to start thinking in the back of your mind and talking to your strategist about what are we going to do on the fuel? Can we make it? Do we expect there to be a yellow? Is this going to go green? So just a lot that went into the new track record 500 tonight. A lot of fun with the Elite Racing League, and a great win for Nate Sefker, and a great last stint for him, last two stints to really stretch that out and pull away for the victory.
Absolutely. And with that, we finish off our first race of the season for the 2022A Mega Driver 86 IndyCar Series. It's the new track record 500. Of course, we want to thank our great partners here at the Elite Racing League, C2 Freight Resources, Blue Egg Marketing, and Powerhouse Recycling. Also want to thank you, Tony, and Burnout Sports for coming on board this season. Can't wait to work with you all season long. And of course, also our race sponsors here tonight, New Track Record Podcast, as well as the Warriors for Peace Project. With that being said, I've been Rishav Khosla, joined by Tony Donahue. We also had Mark Gillespie in here earlier, who unfortunately had to leave just a little bit earlier. He will hopefully be back, but that's been all the action right here on the Elite Racing Network. Make sure you're subscribed for all future races, whether it's the Cup Series, Xfinity, Trucks, IndyCar, or Formula One. It's right here on the center for Elite Racing Leagues. Thank you all so much for watching.